My dad died fighting the Empire. They ripped me away from my mom just to keep the family name alive, and now I am the last one left of this ancient bloodline. Kicked out of the Mage Academy because I got hit with the worst curse a mage could ever have. So I had to carve my own path. But in the middle of all that darkness, I stumbled on some ancient secrets. Your heart and I have met. You are worthy enough to be the cornerstone of a new myth. For the sake of that legend, I'm granting you a second chance. Now I feel like my destiny is just getting started. To get into the city, you had to go through this whole ID check process. The guard on duty freaked out when he saw the ID. Russell Raymond. He knew that last name belonged to the founding family. But the guy standing there was wearing a dirty hood and raggedy clothes. The guard checked him and let him in. As soon as he walked past, the soldiers started gossiping about his family and his look, saying how even though he's a noble, he looked like a total peasant. One of them said he heard rumors that the White Tower was hiring mercenaries and wondered if that's why Russell was dressed like a bum. But the other guy shut him down, saying Russell's a noble, not a peasant, so there's no way he'd work as a mercenary. Raymond heard them talking trash, but he didn't give a damn. The great capital, Camelot, was right there. He headed straight for the Magic Tower, where all the kingdom's guardians hung out. From the outside, the tower was pure white with a massive clock on top, plus another one tracking the moon cycles. He remembered how hard he busted his ass to get in there. After his dad died fighting the Empire just to stop his family from collapsing, Russell had to bolt from the castle. He tried getting into the Magic Tower to reclaim his land, but that was basically a pipe dream, because he got kicked out of the academy before he could even sign up. Russell still remembered the guy telling him he struck out 3 times, saying that even though he was smart with the theory, he'd never hit the second circle, because his mana veins were too narrow. Told him to find a new career. And yeah, Russell really did have constricted mana veins. Since he was born like that, he couldn't use more than a tiny bit of mana, which sucks for a mage. But somehow, while working as a merc, Russell actually managed to reach the second circle, even if he was just a third-rate mage. Then a guy came out of the Magic Tower with 2 guards and announced that sign-ups for temp work were closed for the day, telling everyone to come back tomorrow. People were pissed because they'd been waiting more than half the day. The guy also said they wouldn't take beggars and kicked out the unwanted ones. Raymond just watched as everyone scattered. Some people mentioned the museum was looking for temp mages, but another guy said only first-class mages were wanted there, and going would just be humiliating. As the day ended, looking up at the tower, Russell leaned against a wall and slid down to the ground. He checked his pouch and saw he was basically broke, so he decided to hit up the Great Lavrium Museum inside. A guy was leading some workers, bragging about it being the biggest museum in the kingdom. He said some nobles were coming, so the place had to be spotless. Russell was there with the crew. The boss warned them to watch their wind magic while cleaning, cause if they messed up and broke something, there'd be hell to pay. Raymond thought the guy was being dramatic, thinking everyone around him was fake. While following the guy, he spotted an entrance that looked familiar. He checked the sign on the door, Fantastic Species Room. Suddenly, he felt a vibration in his pocket. It was his mom's ring. His legs just moved on their own, pulling him into the room like it was fate or something. He split from the guide, who was looking around for him. Raymond walked into a room with this massive fossil. As he got closer, the ring started buzzing harder. He wondered what the hell the ring was trying to say. He closed his eyes and remembered coming here with his mom. He remembered a specific corner and went over, finding some ancient stuff, including the heart of an ancient dragon. He looked at the heart, then at the ring, which had a gem that looked just like a dragon SI. For some reason, tears started falling. His hands moved on their own and slipped the ring onto his finger. The buzzing stopped. Nothing happened. Raymond sighed, but then bam, a huge burst of energy shot out of the ring. He heard a dragoness voice say, "The heart and the eye have met, opening the other eye. You are worthy to be the cornerstone of mythology. I grant you another chance for the sake of the legend." That's when Russell realized the gears turning the world had snapped, and his long-awaited destiny was finally starting. These holographic windows popped up saying the Eye of the Divine Dragon King was scanning world data. The stats and quest window for Russell Raymond was activating. Sometime later, Raymond woke up to a furious voice, screaming his name. He recognized the voice, but wondered who it was. He opened his eyes. Smack! A book thrown by the professor nailed him right in the head. He stood up. The teacher was livid, saying that even with Raymond's high grades, he must have some serious nerve to sleep in his class. Raymond was totally confused. The guy standing there was Professor Hilbert, who he was pretty sure had died a long time ago. He looked around, recognized some other kids, and wondered what the hell was going on. He checked his clothes, touched his face, and started shaking. He was freaking ecstatic when he realized he'd gone back in time. Raymond couldn't believe he was back in the past, just staring blankly at the professor. Hilbert said Raymond wasn't usually the type to sleep in class, but he still had to be punished, so he kicked him out of the room. Even after getting kicked out, Raymond was in awe. Time travel magic? Could you even call that magic? Then he remembered the dragon and what it said about a second chance. He looked at his hand and saw the ring was gone, wondering if this was all something his mom planned to save him. The teacher stepped out of the room and called for Russell. The protagonist apologized, but the teacher said they needed to have a private chat. He told him to swing by his office during lunch. Then he turned his back on the protagonist, saying he'd be waiting for him. Russell thought about how long it'd been since he got into trouble like this, but honestly, he was kinda enjoying it. Suddenly, someone smacked Russell from behind. The protagonist cursed, and the attacker heard it. He was with two other people, and one of them decided to hit Russell for running his mouth. But the other guy stopped him since the teacher was watching. The kid with the golden hair claimed he told Russell to take notes for him, but instead, he'd have been sleeping. Russell recognized the guy as Anton Frederick. Frederick said if the protagonist didn't want a world of pain, he'd better follow him to the bathroom. Then he walked off. Raymond remembered that crap like this used to happen all the time back in the day. Suddenly, a window popped up in front of the protagonist with a mission to escape the bullying. He had to teach those three classmates a lesson to get a reward. Raymond had never seen anything like this before and thought he was seeing things, but his hand went right through the window when he tried to touch it. Frederick noticed Raymond wasn't following him and called out again, saying there was no use running since they were in the academy. But hey, if he was scared, he could try to run. Russell sighed. The mission didn't matter to him. He was dead set on teaching Frederick and his cronies a lesson. After years of living as a mercenary, Frederick was nothing compared to the murderous intent Raymond had felt from monsters. The protagonist thought those three were on a pathetic level compared to the monsters he'd faced. Frederick had been waiting for a while, and when he saw Russell arrive, he called him a bastard maggot. Russell didn't let that slide and fired back, calling Frederick a bastard bedbug. One of Frederick's buddies said Russell had finally lost his mind. He attacked the protagonist, but the punch was easily dodged. Russell didn't give him a second chance. He slammed a knee right into the attacker's gut. Seeing his friend get hurt, Frederick's other henchman attacked too, but he got smashed with a punch to the face, ending up just like the first guy. Frederick, surprised to see what was going down, asked Russell if he learned some cheap martial arts, since he couldn't use magic, just as expected from a fallen family. Frederick stepped up to Russell, saying magic wasn't allowed inside academy buildings, but small artifacts were fair game. He equipped a knuckle duster and attacked the protagonist with murderous intent. Russell stood completely still, raised his hand, and caught Frederick's fist as it came flying at him. He pushed Frederick's hand back, twisting it as he said, "Listen, Frederick, you got passed in the rankings by your brothers, and even your family abandoned a loser like you. If your opponents are strong, you hide, but if they re-weak, you bully them. A trash bastard like you dares to mention my family." While he was talking, Raymond didn't realize his eyes had changed. They looked exactly like the ring he used before going back to the past. Frederick was about to piss himself with fear as Russell wound up to punch him. He tried to beg, but it wasn't enough. Walking out of the bathroom and leaving those three idiots on the floor, Russell warned them to behave from now on if they wanted to live. After leaving the restroom, Russell sat in a corner wondering if he'd gone too far, cause he was exhausted. Then he realized the mission was complete when a window appeared in front of him, saying he'd obtained a low-grade magic stone. He held the small red stone in his hand. Russell noticed the stone was a consumable item and wondered if he should actually eat it, since even barbarians don't eat rocks, but he decided to try it anyway. After eating the stone, he got a notification that he'd consumed a mana stone. He saw this as a fresh start, just like his return to the past. He felt power flowing through his body from the mana in the stone. The mana spread through his body like overflowing flames. The amount of mana in his circle increased, getting absorbed near his heart. After a while, the mana started to stabilize. He felt confident, thinking that with this method, maybe he could overcome the limits of his mana veins. After his family's downfall, getting kicked out of the academy and being a third-rate mercenary mage, he felt like he could finally change his destiny. Russell decided to head to the teacher's office. When he got there, Hilbert asked him to have a seat. The teacher was eating cookies and drinking tea. Hilbert mentioned that Russell seemed different than usual and, taking a sip of tea, asked if he was going through a rough patch. Hilbert said he heard classmates were messing with the kid. Russell remembered that Professor Hilbert was someone who never gave up on him in his past life. He'd always wanted to say these words to the professor. "No need to worry." "Thanks, Professor." Hilbert was surprised by the answer and, clearing his throat, said that as a teacher it was obvious he should look out for his students. However, since Raymond had slept in class, he needed to be punished, and the teacher wasn't going to go easy on him. Hilbert then grabbed a book and ordered Russell to write an analysis on intensive elemental studies between pages 62 and 74, saying this was a section even older students had trouble understanding. Russell got a mission notification asking him to complete the teacher's task, depending on Hilbert's satisfaction level. He'd receive a low-level mana stone and maybe other extra rewards. The protagonist froze a little when he read the mission. The teacher took that to mean he thought the task was too hard. Raymond denied it and thanked the professor. Russell went back to his dorm. For him, the task wasn't hard at all, since due to his trash mana skills in his past life, he'd worked his butt off studying the theories behind it. Even while working as a mercenary, he hadn't stopped studying. But Russell knew that in this life, there was something more important than just hitting the books. Mana vein training. Basically, the pathways where mana flows. You breathe it in, it zips through the veins and pools in the heart. Back in his past life, dude was trying to train this while literally getting chased down by monsters. Triggered some reversal magic or whatever. Basically, stronger veins mean you hoard more mana and blast spells way faster, which he used to fight back and save his own skin. Problem was, his mana veins were super thin and weak. So he always got wrecked in fights. But hey, looks like the heavens finally felt bad for him. Maybe it was his crappy fate or just dumb luck, but Russell stumbled upon this ancient ruin totally off the map, hiding 2 grimoires. One for veins, one for the body. This time around, Russell S. using both books to level up his physique and his mana veins. The body grimoire was wild. It replaces muscle tissue with mana vein parts. So, the beefier his body gets, the tougher his mana veins become. It didn't do much when he was full grown in his last life, but now, he's still growing, so he's expecting some insane gains. He was dead set on breaking his limits. Russell grinded every single day. One day, he's totally wiped, but boom, gets a quest to run 5 kilometers. This quest pops up once a day, changing distance based on his vein skill level, and vanishes once he hits a certain rank. Russell sighed, but he wasn't going to waste this second chance sitting on his butt. Even after a brutal day, he decided to crush that 5-kilometer run. Pushed himself until his legs gave out, finally finishing when it was pitch black outside. Creeping in the corner, some guy was watching Russell, talking trash about how it's all useless while plotting something shady. Professor Hilbert couldn't believe his eyes. Russell dropped some deep conclusions in his report using just basic academic stuff. He asked the kid if he wrote it himself. Russell was like, "Yeah, I did. I'll even take a mana oath if you don't believe me." Hearing that, Hilbert realized the kid wasn't bluffing. He was super confident. Hilbert shuffled his papers, looking pretty pleased. Just like that, mission accomplished for Russell. On top of the usual loot, he leveled up his beast summoning knowledge, boosted his magic power, cut down mana costs, and slashed his casting time. Russell realized that the more he understands, the stronger he gets. Simple as that. The prof gave him props and dismissed him. But before dipping, Russell asked for a solid. The prof was like, "Why do you want to use the faculty library?" Figuring the student library should have plenty of books for a kid like him. Russell straight up said he already read every single book there. Hilbert was shook, but said even if that's true, getting into the faculty library is a whole different ballgame. He'd have to test if Russell's actually qualified. Russell agreed that made sense, but man, he didn't expect the prof to dump so many tasks on him. Never thought Hilbert would be this picky. Russell knew that the stronger your theory, the stronger your magic. So, he had to level up. His brain power using the faculty library, no matter what. Sure, doing quests for access was a pain, but snagging mana stones as rewards? That's killing 2 birds with 1 stone. While Russell was chilling, that same stalker guy from before rolled up with his crew. Anton Frederick starts yapping about how Russell supposedly has a mana penalty, but now just looks like a gym rat. Then he adds that his buddies suffered because of Russell. Russell asked him what's up. Anton laughed at first, then made this disgusted face telling Russell to stop dreaming. Nobody bothers getting revenge on a loser. Stepping on them is enough. Said he'd see him in class and walked off without throwing a punch. Anton's minions asked why he didn't do anything. He said it's because there was nobody around to watch the humiliation. Russell then remembered combat magic practicals were coming up. That's the class where student rankings are decided by fighting each other. He always got trashed in that class before. Russell couldn't believe he actually forgot about it and decided to prep. Ding! Got a quest to hit the second circle. Combining that with Hilbert's endless assignments. Our main man studied hard, cranked out reports, and stacked up those quest rewards. Pretty soon, he had a stash of mana stones. He wasn't sure if he could handle that much power, but he shoved the fear aside and made a choice. He'd trust the grind he put in so far. Down the hatch went the mana stones. A few seconds later, a crazy wave of mana, hot as fire, flooded his body. He felt like he was burning alive, and knew he had to steer that energy fast. Shaping the flow, spinning it, and forming a new circle. If he messed up, his heart might just explode. But he was all in. He guided the flow straight to his heart, determined to make that power his. A massive burst of Light blasted out the window as Russell nailed the second circle. Then he crashed and passed out. Didn't he even see the reward, which buffed his fire, water, and lightning magic? The next day, Russell was back in Professor Hilbert's office. The prof read all the reports and thought they were sick, but he had one last question. He wanted to dig deeper into the basics than before. So, the teach hits him with a real question, getting straight to the point. He asks Russell which of the four structures is the big deal, like where the magic actually gets squeezed in. Russell had to think for a sec. This wasn't some basic quiz. Even Hilbert only figured this stuff out recently. The prof was about to switch questions, probably thinking it was too hard, but our main guy just blurts out the answer. The teacher totally froze, like he couldn't believe his ears. Russell said the most important part is the mental image. The prof was like, "Whoa, why do you think that?" So Russell breaks it down. Magic is just making stuff real using mana. The world splits progress into 4 levels, right? First is assimilation, learning how nature works. Then mental image, visualizing that stuff in your head. Third is formula construction, turning those picks into code to make them happen. And finally, manifestation, when the magic actually becomes real. You can grind out assimilation, construction, and manifestation just by studying hard. But mental image? Nah, you can't just hustle your way through that one. It's about smashing limits and freeing your imagination with pure guts. That's what decides your level. Like, if you take a flame and picture it as an arrow, boom, you got a second level spell, Fire Arrow. Imagine it differently, and you get something totally unique. If you uncap your imagination, you could create stuff that doesn't even exist, like living creatures. That's miracle level stuff. That's exactly what Hilbert figured out too. Like Shadows from the Sun or Hot Ice, imagination starts with understanding the world but ends with twisting it. That is magic. Hilbert was totally shook. He's like, "Just as I thought, the student library is way too small for you." Ding! Russell completes the quest and scores 2 low-level mana stones. Russell heads straight for the faculty library. The first floor was massive, totally different vibe from the student section. He found books like 3D ballistic trajectory magic and intensive botanical magic. Serious nerd stuff. It was super practical but still had the basics. While Russell's reading, someone walks up and says, "That's a pretty interesting book you got there." The voice came from behind, but when he turned around, the person was already standing right in front of his desk. Creepy fast. It was a lady in a huge hat and fancy white, gray, and red clothes. Russell knew her instantly, Daria Snow White. He stood up to greet the master of the Flame Tower. He introduced himself. She's an 8th circle mage, a level almost nobody in the world ever reaches. Even though she's like 80, she uses a ton of mana to look young. She's the top-ranked mage of the Red Tower faction. That's Daria Snow White for you. She was surprised Russell knew who she was and told him to chill out. Russell was wondering what she was doing there. Daria whips out a lollipop, hands it to him, and says she's just a fellow mage taking a stroll. Russell took the candy and followed her. She asked how he got permission to be in the library. Russell told her Professor Hilbert gave him the green light. Daria was shocked a guy like Hilbert would do that. She smiled, saying it made sense since he was studying cool stuff. Then she checked him out magically speaking and said his mana was super pure and stable, which is incredibly rare. Russell figured she noticed something. Then she turned to leave, telling him not to sweat it. She wasn't there to lecture him. Russell bowed to say thanks. Tapping her cane and leaking some serious fire energy, Daria wished the kid she just met would reach his max potential. Russell left the library, totally mind-blown he just met Daria. But then some people saw him walking out of the teacher's section. They laughed, saying he must be sucked up to a teacher to get in, and that it wouldn't help him anyway. Anton told Russell to try his best, even if it was pointless. Finally, the day for the real combat magic class arrived. The first person called goes down to the arena and picks an opponent. Teachers usually pick the weak kids first, so they can pick someone on their own level. In the past, Russell was always called first. People were betting he'd get picked cause of his messed up veins. Everyone was screaming for Russell to pick them so they could pad their grades. The teach in the center told everyone to shut up so he could pick. Everyone thought it to be Russell, but nope, he called Anton Frederick. Anton went down grinning, surprising everyone. He thanked the prof, who was like, "This favor is nothing compared to what the Frederick Merchant Association does for us." Russell knew it was rigged. Anton looked at him and asked, "Why are you still sitting? Get down here." Meanwhile, Hilbert got a surprise visit from Daria. She sat on the couch saying, "It's no big deal for a teacher to visit a former student." She grabbed some tea and asked if he let a kid named Russell use the faculty library. Hilbert got worried, thinking Russell messed up, but Daria was like, "Nah, I just haven't seen something that rare and precious in forever." Hilbert looked down, saying Russell's constricted mana veins were a rare condition, even for this continent. Daria smiled, calling Hilbert sharp, and said the kid had already beaten that problem. Hilbert realized what she meant. Then she dropped the bomb. The kid already reached the second circle. The professor was completely floored. Back in the arena, Russell got a quest to win the magic duel. The reward? Magic stones and a 40-kilo inventory slot. Storage spaces are totally a rich mage thing, super useful for hoarding magic stones. Anyway, while Russell was checking out the quest info, Anton calls him a bug, striking some cocky pose and unleashing his mana like, "You frozen or what?" Then he tells him, if he wants to live, he better get on his knees and beg. Our boy just laughs and unleashes his own power. A prof tells him to get in position because the match is about to start. Anton's totally shook. He's freaking out because Russell, who's supposed to have clogged mana veins, actually hit the second circle. Anton strikes first, blasting a second circle spell, Flamethrower. The fire rushes Russell, but he instantly pops a barrier to block it. Some guy starts clapping, impressed that Russell made a shield that thin, but still strong enough to deflect the flames and keep him safe. The prof who called Anton up first is totally stunned, wondering if Russell's been hiding his skills this whole time. Anton can't believe Russell actually blocked it. His firepower starts fading out. Russell spots an opening and rips a second circle spell, Fire Arrow. It tears right through Anton's flames. Anton Frederick can't believe Russell actually hit the second circle while he scrambles to put up a shield. He manages to block it. But when he looks up, Russell's already got a second arrow locked and loaded. The teachers are freaking out seeing rapid fire shots, wondering if he's pulling off a double cast. One prof watches close and says Russell's casting speed is just so fast it looks like a double cast. Anton, cowering behind his defense, thinks Fire Arrow is the only trick Russell has. So he throws up a specific anti-fire shield, second circle magic. Russell smirks, cause he was waiting for exactly that. Anton planned to fight back once Russell ran out of juice, but then Russell cancels his fire spell, totally confusing him. Then our boy switches to a similar skill, Wind Arrow. It smashes right through Anton's shield and nails him. No one can believe Russell read Anton's shield type that fast. Anton drops to his knees, but before he can get up, Russell's right in his face. He starts wailing on Anton, slamming him into the dirt. The ref wants to stop the fight, but Hilbert, sitting next to him, tells him to look closely at Russell. Hilbert admits he doesn't know how Russell did it, but the kid found a crazy way to use his mana. Russell keeps pounding on Anton Frederick until the guy literally sinks into the arena floor. Everyone, students, teachers, is just totally stunned. Hilbert asks the prof next to him why he's just freezing there and tells him to announce the winner. The prof snaps out of it and announces Russell Raymond as the winner. The prof runs into the arena saying Russell can leave, but our boy says the fight isn't over yet. He reminds them that per the class rules, unless the winner quits, he's allowed to call out the next victim. Russell shocks everyone by pointing at a specific spot, challenging someone and telling them to get their ass down here. See, he got a mission to win the whole tournament. Later, Hilbert's back in his office staring out the window. He's already seen Russell win 14 times in a row, and figures the kid must have unlocked some serious power. Daria only met Russell once, but she saw the potential right away. Anyway, Hilbert wonders how Russell got so strong so fast. Our boy got a bunch of rewards for the missions he crushed, including that storage space. It looks like a magic void, and Russell wonders if the real loot is inside. He reaches in and pulls out a map. Then, a notification pops up. Mission number 1. Go to the marked spot and handle business. Lights will guide the way, but there's a note saying he should only try this after hitting the 3rd circle. Russell's surprised. He tried 1,000,000 times in his past life, but never managed to hit the 3rd circle. He wonders if he can pull it off this time. He checks the map, wondering where the hell this place is. Russell heads to the faculty library, planning to dig through books for a clue about the map location. The first book he grabs is about lands outside the kingdom of Endymion. He skims it and grabs the next one, covering the empire's coast. He keeps going, reading a ton of others. Russell's dug through dozens of books, but absolutely nothing matches the map. He leaves the library, feeling like he wasted way too much time hunting for this spot, so he decides to just focus on hitting the 3rd circle. While he's walking, everyone stares. In this life, nobody messes with him, but he's still pretty much a loner. Suddenly, someone calls out to him. It's Professor Hilbert asking our boy to tag along. The sun is shining, and while pouring tea for Russell, the prof mentions summer break is coming up. He asks if the kid has plans, but Russell says nah. Hilbert suggests Russell work with him on a research project. The prof says that, depending on how Russell does, he could even get credit as a co-author. Russell grabs some flyers on the table and sees something that totally catches him off guard. While the prof asks if he's in, Russell apologizes, saying he actually does have plans for the summer. Hilbert thinks that's weird because Russell just said the opposite a second ago, but he takes the flyer the kid hands back. Russell walks out while the prof stares at the flyer. It's an ad for a vacation in the Maldives. Russell hopped in a carriage to get to his destination. Since the ride was super long, he knew he got to eat something on the way. He just grabbed a mana stone from storage and tossed it right into his mouth. Figured that would keep his stomach happy for a while. The dude driving the carriage was totally weirded out by the weather though. Even though it was summer, it was scorching hot. He didn't realize that right behind him, inside the carriage, Russell's fire mana was overflowing, making it feel like an oven. Russell's plan was to hit the third circle before reaching the Maldives. Hilbert knew the protagonist was heading there and thought it was kinda intriguing, but in the end, he figured it might be a good thing since a certain fire mage named Daria Snow White was supposed to be there too. The Endymion Sea in the Maldives was Daria's home turf. She'd seen that place a million times growing up, but even after all this time, she had to admit it was still beautiful. The old mage was wondering when she last took a real vacation. While sipping her drink, she remembered she was always stuck protecting the Empire, doing magic research, presentations, and raising up students. She flashed back to a class she taught, explaining that the numbers 6 and 3 meant something special to mages. She explained that the number 9 meant the end of the road for those chasing the path of the 9th circle of magic. The number 6 symbolized the completion of a 6th circle mage and all the suffering they went through to become great. And the number 3? That represented the start of a mage's lonely life. Daria suddenly remembered someone and wondered how that lonely kid was doing. It was the boy she met in the library, Russell Raymond. Finally, Russell's carriage pulled up to the spot. The driver was wondering why nobody was getting out, so he went to check the door. When he opened it, he let out a scared scream, cause Russell had just vanished. Russell was already somewhere else, chowing down on bread and sides. He'd used way too much strength trying to calm down the mana that went crazy inside his body. That is why he was found passed out in the carriage, but he finally reached his goal, the third circle. He let out a little bit of his mana. Ooh. Unable to believe he'd already surpassed the power of his past life just a few months after turning back time. He tossed some coins on the table to pay for the food and stood up. He wasn't satisfied with just this level of power. He planned to go way further. Russell planned to find the spot marked on the map. There was info saying a light would guide him when he got close, which would help. He gripped the map in his hands, telling himself he needed to find that spot. While he was deep in thought, Russell heard some guy yelling his head off. The guy was promoting a tour of the Pompeii volcano, claiming to be the best guide ever. Russell decided to tag along with the dude, leading a group up to the mountains. The man said that according to legend, Pompeii was originally just a normal mountain that turned into a volcano because a special creature started living there. Russell stared at the volcano, imagining what kind of creature could change nature just by existing. There wasn't a single creature like that in the world except for a red dragon. Russell figured it to be better to go solo from there. He jumped right off the cliff he was standing on and landed in the forest below, leaving those people behind wondering where the heck he went. Russell reached a lake fed by a waterfall. Thinking about his return and the growth he got from quests and rewards, the protagonist figured all these wins had to be linked to a dragon. Getting to the waterfall, Russell opened the map again. It glowed and pumped out a bunch of mana that turned into a small sphere. The mana then headed in one direction. Russell realized this was what they meant by the light that would guide him when he got close. The bright light shot right through the waterfall, and Russell realized there had to be something behind the water. So he created a wind arrow and fired it at the falls, making the water scatter and creating a momentary hole so he could slip into the cave behind it. Russell was surprised nobody had found this place before. He walked through the cave, remembering he was told to wait until he hit the third circle, but he didn't see any monsters or beasts in there. After walking for a bit, Russell found some pillars. He touched an ancient pillar and, boom, found the light he'd been following. The light was hovering in front of a huge gate that looked like it was guarded by 2 statues. Russell kept moving forward, not realizing something was stalking him. The protagonist kicked himself for forgetting his mercenary days and letting his guard down. In a situation with no monsters, beasts, or sounds, that meant he was in the territory of a strong predator. Russell spun around and came face to face with a gigantic Komodo lizard. The animal roared and swung its tail to attack Russell, but luckily he dodged, making the lizard smash a pillar next to him instead. The protagonist backed off, knowing the Komodo lizard was a monster that usually took 2 whole mercenary teams to take down. The only thing he could do now was run. Russell used second circle magic lightning arrow. He waited for the lizard to get close to fire the arrow. The hit lizard got electrocuted, screaming in pain. Thanks to that, Russell managed to buy some time to run. He decided to go straight for the stone door. But when he got close, the statues blocked the way and demanded he prove he was worthy using his mana. Russell was furious, but right then, the lizard had already closed in again. Decided to carve his own path, he summoned his fire mana. Without realizing it, his eyes changed again. He reached out one hand and, with the other, pressed his fingers on his wrist. He materialized second circle magic fire ray. Just as he was about to attack, a jewel on the door started sucking up some of the mana he was leaking, without Russell noticing. The Komodo lizard stopped, surprising Russell. He watched the lizard get closer, look him in the eyes, and to his surprise, bow down. The statues unblocked the path for Russell, who was totally confused. They then said he'd given the necessary proof. The next instant, the jewel on the door shone intensely, blinding the protagonist. A few moments later, Russell opened his eyes and found himself in a hall with a floor covered in ice. Whoa, statues everywhere. He's wondering if he just got hit with some teleportation magic, because he was literally in a cave 2 seconds ago. Then Russell spins around and sees something totally sick. There's a massive horn chained up in the corner with a staircase leading right to it. Ding! Quest alert. He's got to smash every single ice golem in the area to beat this trial of fire. Classic. Suddenly, those statues start morphing into ice golems. Great. Time to fight. He knows he has to wipe out every last one of them. Russell starts blasting fire magic, but these things aren't going down easy. He realizes he's got to shatter the core inside him to kill him for good, but these guys are tough as nails. His attacks are barely scratching them. Russell grinds his teeth. This is getting annoying. He wonders just how cold that ice is. Since fire ain't working perfectly, he tries to switch to wind magic, but nope, nothing happens. One of the golems rushes him. Russell tries to zap it with lightning magic, but that fails too. Seriously. He barely dodges the hit. Then it hits him. Literally. The notification said, Trial of Fire. Genius. He figures it out. No fire, no magic. He's stuck using only flames. Backed into a corner, things are looking pretty grim. But no way is he quitting. He summons a second circle spell, Fire Beam. The fire of bravery lights up in his eyes. He's determined to crush this quest. Russell starts spamming fire spells like crazy, exposing their cores and smashing them one by one. Only a few left, but at this rate, he's gonna burn through all his mana before he can drop the last two. He needs a new plan, fast. While dodging these icy freaks, he comes up with a wicked idea. He's gotta pierce right through him in one shot, concentrate all the power on a single point. It's all about density, baby. He backs off to charge up, starts with a fire arrow, adds an amplification formula, then decides to stack a bunch of copies on top. He uses the fire beam formula to fuse everything. He's compressing all those arrows, squeezing them together tight. But before he can finish, a golem gets in his face. It's winding up a punch and Russell S. just praying, come on, fuse already. Boom. Massive explosion. He actually did it. He blew a hole right through the ice golem and formed this sick ember lance. System notification pops up. Understanding of fire has transcended limits. His firepower just leveled up big time. This lance feels insane, like close to 5th circle magic power, but holding it is draining his mana like crazy. Gotta move fast. He charges the golems. They try to hit him, but he's way faster now, skewering them one by one. Down to the final 4. He drops 2 instantly. The third tries to swing at him, but Russell just slices the thing in half. The last one sneaks out of sight. By the time Russell realizes where it went, bam, attacked from behind. He goes flying into a pile of rubble. Luckily, he blocked the hit with his lance, so he's not totally wrecked. He's got maybe 1 breath of mana left. The lance is flickering out. Russell stands up, gripping it for one last shot. He hurls it at the golem, screaming inside, "Just die already!" A blinding flash lights up the whole room. When the light fades, the golem is still standing there. Russell's out of weapons and steam is everywhere. But wait, there's a massive hole in its chest. Russell, dirty and stumbling, grins. That's a win. Then he blacks out, collapsing onto the floor covered in chunks of shattered ice. A notification pops up confirming the clear. He'll check it later. Reward, 2 mana stones. Wait, plus 3 low-level mana stones and an unknown reward? It's the essence of fire, the horn of the Forgotten King. As soon as he gets the reward, that horn chained in the corner starts glowing. It's shining super bright now. Russell's passed out, so he has no clue his mind is syncing up with some ancient king. He wakes up totally confused. He's not in the cave anymore. He's chained up in this dark void. Notifications explain the situation. He's wondering, who's this Forgotten King and is this his fire dragon horn? Also, what kind of crappy reward is this? Why is he getting tortured right now? Suddenly, a creepy voice echoes in his head. You who passed the trial of fire and reached the sublime thoughts. I grant you the fragment of the king. Russell's head feels like it's going to explode as he watches the horn burst into flames. He can move because of the chains, and then shink. The horn stabs right through him. The pain is unreal as power explodes inside him. While he's screaming in agony, that dragon voice comes back, begging him to use this power for some special mission. Next thing he knows, he wakes up on a beach in the Maldives. He gets up, looking around like, what the hell just happened? Notifications start popping off. Because he ate that horn, his mana is overflowing and his fire knowledge skyrocketed. He clenches his fist and lets out some mana. Whoa, his power jumped like crazy. He's almost at the fourth circle. He grins. Okay, maybe the torture was worth it. This reward is absolutely dope. While he was spacing out, someone snuck up behind him. A familiar voice said it was awesome to see him there. Russell turned around and saw it was Daria Snow White. They walked over to a nearby kiosk, and Daria explained she felt a sudden mana burst, went to check it out, and ended up finding Russell. She handed him a juice, and he thanked her, saying he totally didn't expect to run into her here. Daria eyed him closely, realizing Russell was super close to hitting the fourth circle in no time flat, and that his mana had gotten even purer. She knew this kid was a genius, no doubt. Russell, getting curious, asked what Daria was doing in the Maldives. The mage revealed that hardly anyone knew. But this was actually her hometown, which totally shocked Russell. She explained that's why she spent every summer chilling in the Maldives. Then she asked what Russell was doing there. Not wanting to spill the beans just yet, Russell claimed he was just out exploring the world. Daria bought his excuse, but wondered if she should test his skills. So she asked Russell to help her with a task. Russell was kinda confused, but Daria wrapped him in her mana, branding the flower symbol, the emblem of the Tower of Flames, right onto his shirt. She told him to chill, saying the request was totally within his league. Right after, Russell got a quest notification asking him to help Daria fight off some pirates who were attacking the Maldives. By nightfall, Daria explained to Russell that Endymion strictly banned slavery, and that's why they didn't let human trafficking ships dock at the ports. But some of those scumbag ships were trying to sneak close to the Maldives anyway. On a small boat heading out to sea, Daria Snow White mentioned she could totally solo this mission, but the plan involved rescuing victims on the ship, which needed more attention to detail. Russell figured out fast that they needed to create a fake attack, and Daria was like, "You got it." Russell thought that if the master of the Tower of Flames was asking for help, hundreds of mages would line up to do it. However, since she picked him specifically, he figured this was probably a test. As the boat got close to the ship, Daria explained that what he'd see might be a bit intense for him, but the path of a guardian isn't always noble and smooth sailing. That was just part of a mage's destiny. Daria jumped onto the ship, telling Russell she'd cause a distraction so he could save the people while she dealt with the enemies. Alone in the boat, Russell chewed on her words. The mage flew over the ship, and when she found the perfect spot, she unleashed a massive amount of mana, lighting up the whole sea and signaling Russell to make his move. The pirates noticed the attack real quick and scrambled, grabbing their weapons and prepping a giant crossbow to fire a harpoon at Daria. On command, all the pirates fired but failed miserably. Their arrows didn't even hit the target. She summoned some flames in her hands and looked down on the fools, asking how they dared to hide in her hometown. Then she blew the flames, and they fell like flower petals. With total disdain, she said she wanted to see if the pirates were as skilled as they were cocky. The flames hit the ship fast. The pirates backed off, but suddenly the fire morphed into humanoid shapes and grabbed them. This was Daria Snow White's signature magic, known as the Dwarves of Burning Wood. Her fire dwarves took over the ship in seconds. Seizing the chance, Russell stormed the ship, watching both the pirates and Daria's magic. A pirate tried to attack a fire dwarf, but his axe went right through the creature, which just reformed immediately. Russell remembered that this magic of Daria's had destroyed a whole castle by itself once, and he was stoked to witness it in person. In just a few seconds, the dwarves attacked the pirates, turning them to ash one by one. Knowing he couldn't get distracted, Russell found a door on the ship and went down the stairs, aware that he had to rescue the people while Daria distracted the pirates. In the brig, one of the pirates was wondering what the heck was happening outside. The prisoners were hyped, saying someone had arrived to save them. Annoyed, the pirate banged his sword against the bars, yelling that no matter what happened, they were never escaping. While the pirate was distracted, a silent hand crept up from behind, grabbing his neck. Russell used lightning magic, electrocuting the pirate until he dropped, burnt to a crisp. Russell sighed, because he totally expected to find pirates on the way. Just then, one of the prisoners came up to the bars, asking if Russell was there to save them. He said yeah, but warned that until the pirates were defeated, it'd be safer for them to stay inside the cell. One prisoner knelt down, thanking God for hearing their prayers. Russell looked at the cells, shocked at how many people were crammed into such a small space. To his surprise, even kids were locked up in there. He gritted his teeth, cursing the pirates. While he was checking out the place, a bunch of pirates burst through the door, spotting Russell and the defeated pirate. They quickly drew their swords and rushed him, trying to capture him. But Russell summoned lightning magic, creating chains to trap his enemies. Using a second circle spell, he launched electric chains that hit all the pirates at once. The pirates hit the floor, not knowing Russell was a mage, but still trusting their captain to handle him. Russell then finished them all off. Walking a bit further through the room, he noticed someone in a cell who recognized the symbol on his shirt. The person asked if he was a mage from the Tower of Flames. Russell used light magic to see better inside the cell and realized the prisoners were elves. They recognized the symbol on his shirt, but Russell explained he wasn't an official Tower of Flames mage yet. One elf stood up all arrogant and ordered Russell to open the cell. Even though he was about to do it, the elf's annoying tone made him hesitate. Russell knew elves were full of themselves and wondered if he should just leave them there. Just then, an elf girl with this white-haired elf girl totally checked that arrogant elf, telling him to mind his manners. The others called her Elo. She stepped up to the bars and was like, "This human right here, he ain't normal." She said Russell's mana was pure as a sunset or whatever, and get this, she said she could actually smell the spirits on him. The guy was totally confused, so she had to spell it out again. She could smell the spirits coming off Russell. Everyone was shook, our MC and the elves included. The elves were like, "No way that's real." Russell even gave himself a sniff check, but he didn't smell a thing. Yo. That elf who was being a jerk earlier suddenly bowed down, asking super politely for a rescue. Then the whole crew did the same, bowing and begging him. Russell knows elves usually have massive egos, so he saw how fast they flipped their script just cause of what she said. He started wondering if white-haired girl was a high elf or someone even higher up the food chain. Russell was using fire mana to melt the cell locks. Then Elo asks if he took out all the pirates and the bosses. Russell was like, "Bosses? What bosses?" Elo explained they're way stronger than her warriors and know a ton of magic. While they were chatting, some armored dude went down to the lower deck. He saw the empty cells and the pirates laid out on the floor and just let out this creepy, evil laugh. Up top, this bald guy steering the ship was watching the pirates struggle against the fire magic. He whipped out a massive heavy sword from his back and slashed through two of the flame dwarves. He started roasting the other pirates for struggling, and they realized it was the captain. Their guts came back instantly, bragging that the captain was going to chop that mage in the sky into pieces. Daria, watching from above, thought it was getting interesting, so she dropped down to the ship. She landed right where the captain had been standing. He glared at her, looking super ticked off, asking if she was seriously closing the distance between them. Daria Snow White realized this bald guy was the captain, and his name was Click. Seeing he was using an aura, she figured he must have been a knight back in the day, so she asked why he was doing all this shady stuff. Don Click just started laughing, asking if a knight's honor puts food on the table or pays taxes. He shouted that he and the Click brothers were making way more cash selling slaves. Daria wondered why he was talking about brothers, when he was the only one standing there. Then Don Click charged in with his sword to attack her. Inside the ship, Russell suddenly got a bad feeling. A huge explosion blew out a wooden wall, but he threw up a shield just in time. He looked down and saw a bunch of spears had slammed into his shield. The armored guy who showed up near the cells earlier realized his attack got blocked. He figured Russell was a mage. Our main character scoped out the guy in front of him, saw the aura he was pumping out, and guessed he was a knight. Then Russell got a battle notification telling him to take this guy down. It was going to be his first time fighting a swordsman. Elo was standing behind Russell and told him to watch out because the guy in front of them was the ship's vice captain. The vice captain was like, "Yeah, you're a mage, but you're still just a kid." He kicked the unconscious pirates, asking if Russell just knocked them out instead of finishing the job. He said, "You gotta kill if you actually want to win a battle." Then he pointed his sword right at our MC, cranking up his aura even more, and said he was going to show him how it's really done. Russell had to think fast. Fire magic does too much splash damage, so he decided to go with electricity, a third circle magic, electric bolt. The vice captain saw the lightning coming and just sliced right through it, giving Russell props for at least using his brain. Then he charged forward, blasting through the lightning like it was nothing. Russell fired off a bunch more bolts, but the guy kept coming, using his wavy sword to block everything. Russell realized that sword wasn't conductive. While he was figuring that out, the vice captain got close enough to strike, forcing Russell to throw up a shield to save himself. The sword slammed into the shield hard and started slowly piercing right through it. After a bit, the shield shattered and the attack came down on Russell. Outside, the captain was fighting Daria. He thought he landed a hit on her, but he just slashed some flames. They were just decoy flames she left behind while she materialized somewhere else. The pirate captain actually gave the mage some props. Daria had a question for the guy. She wanted to know if his brother was a knight too. The captain was like, "Yeah, but he's not as skilled as me." Daria sighed and said she worried for nothing. Then she cast some fire magic, summoning these flaming creatures. The fire monsters surrounded Don Click super fast, but he slashed them with his sword. He thought she was just using that same fire dwarf skill again, but Daria Snow White was like, "Nah, this time it's different." Right then, the fire monsters he de-slashed started splitting into more of them. Don Click realized that the more he cut them, the more they multiplied. That was Daria's special move, the Hellfire Dwarves. The mage watched while her summoned dwarves went after Don Click. Under pressure, the pirate finally realized he was dealing with the famous Witch of the Flame Tower. Down in the lower deck, Don Click's brother wasn't having a good time. He couldn't figure out how Russell kept dodging his attacks. He clearly remembered slicing him in half with that last hit. He wondered if the mage was buffing his body with magic to boost his physical stats. The knight laughed, thinking it wouldn't make a difference anyway. He was sure Russell was just a rat caught in a trap. Elo was totally freaking out about our MC, but Russell was having a flashback to a past life, remembering a knight who wiped out an innocent mercenary squad with just one touch. The only guy who managed to stop that crazy knight was a mage who used shields to block the attacks. The trick was simple: stack one shield on top of another. Russell decided to use that same strat to block the Click Brother's attacks. Suddenly, the knight realized that right after one of his hits, Russell had pulled back the shield. When he looked up, it was already too late. Russell had already cast a wind magic spell, slamming the knight right in the chest and yeeting him into the wall. The impact made the dude spit blood before face planting on the floor. Even though he won the fight, Russell realized he'd lost a ton of blood. He smashed the rest of the locks and busted the elves out. Elo walked out of the cell and thanked Russell, calling him Guardian again. Our guy told them to follow him, but right then the knight got back up, telling Russell that if he really wanted to win, he should have aimed for the head. Russell told the elves to set the other prisoners free. The elf who'd first made contact with him gritted his teeth, asking if Russell was serious about freeing the humans, but Elo was down for it. The knight standing in front of them just laughed, asking if Russell really thought he had time to save slaves. He charged forward, warning our main guy to worry about his own hide first. Russell went back to his shield strat, but the knight kept attacking without giving him a chance to hit back. With a wicked grin, the knight watched the kid defending himself with just shields. Russell planned to just hold out a little longer until everyone could escape. A bit later, Elo shouted that everyone was safe. The knight smirked, asking if they thought that actually made a difference. But Russell's tone shifted, and he was like, "Yeah, it does." It wasn't just his voice. His eyes changed too, as he summoned flames all over the ship's deck. He gave the knight an ultimatum. "It makes a difference, 'cause now I can crush you." Russell blocked the knight's attacks with his shield while setting the whole ship on fire. The knight backed off, realizing the vibe around Russell had totally changed. He wondered if the kid was finally ready to stop being nice. Then he charged, planning to skewer Russell right through his shield. But before he could get close, Russell used the magic he created, the flaming lance. As he charged, the knight wondered if it was just a basic fire spear, but he quickly realized this magic was on a whole other level than he imagined. Finally, the knight's sword and the flaming lance clashed. At the ship's bow, the captain was still getting pressured by the hell dwarves, which were multiplying like crazy. He wondered what his brother was doing, thinking they could take out the mage if they worked together. The captain kept slicing through dwarves, trying to buy time until his brother showed up, but he got a nasty surprise when the floor beneath him started cracking. Through the cracks, he could see flames from the lower deck. Before he could react, a tower of flames erupted from below, blasting everything sky high. The captain took the hit and couldn't believe what just happened. Daria saw the explosion's power and was just as shocked. She looked at the door leading downstairs and saw a bunch of freed slaves. Daria admitted she messed up, because it looked like Russell had taken control of the battle. Through the huge hole made by the Tower of Flames, Daria saw Russell lying on the floor below. He'd finished his mission. Realizing the captain was defeated, the pirate crew bailed to the lifeboats, planning to surround the ship and attack the invaders from there. But Daria didn't just stand there. She ordered her fire dwarves to jump into the boats to deal with the pirates. A while later, Russell felt warmth spreading through his body. When he opened his eyes, he saw Elo using healing magic on him. The elf told him not to move, since his mana hadn't fully recovered yet, so the healing was slow. Daria congratulated Russell for taking down 2 knights all by himself. Russell was confused, thinking he'd only fought 1, but Daria clarified that in the end, it was 2. Elo then thanked our protagonist, saying that even though she couldn't repay his kindness right away, she, Elo of the White Arrain tribe, swore that Daria Snow White would reward him in the name of her ancestors. Russell introduced himself, saying he just did what a guardian's gotta do. Daria Snow White told Elo not to forget about the Tower of Flames either. Just then, 2 elves got Daria's attention, reporting they'd checked on the prisoners. Daria watched them and commented she'd gotten some good subordinates. Russell noticed the elves' attitude when talking to Daria was way different than before. Russell then asked what Elo meant by what she said in the cabin. Elo answered it was about the scent of spirits she smelled on him. Hearing that, Daria Snow White was surprised. Elo asked if somehow Russell had dragon blood in his veins. The main guy got thoughtful. Elo then revealed she had a tiny bit of dragon blood running in her veins, even if it was just like a drop of water in a lake. But even that tiny amount was enough to attract spirits. Holding Russell's hand, she said she smelled a strong scent of spirits coming from him. So she asked if he had dragon blood too. Daria Snow White, who was listening in, wondered if the reason Russell became so strong so fast was related to dragon blood. She figured Russell might become someone capable of shaking up the kingdom of Endymion, or even the whole world. After docking at the port, a bunch of soldiers rescued the wounded. The elves, wearing hoods, were getting ready to leave. Daria called out to Elo, asking if they were going to stay hidden until everyone's mana was fully restored. Elo confirmed, and Daria offered her nearby mansion so the elves could rest until they recovered. She also hinted she could help with Russell's training. Our protagonist was surprised by the mention of training. Elo was happy to know she could pay back her debt that way. Daria, noticing Russell's surprise, asked if he wouldn't want to join some training. He replied that he'd love to. Daria then guided them, saying the carriages would arrive soon. As they were leaving, Russell asked the Tower of Flames mage about the semester that was about to start. Daria reassured him, saying Professor Hilbert would handle all the issues related to that. The carriages took Russell, Daria, and the elves to the great mage of the Tower of Flames mansion, a place as huge and imposing as a castle. Russell hopped out of the carriage and was like, "Whoa, this place is huge." Daria went in first to chill the vibe so he wouldn't feel stressed, just comfy. The squad walked through the mansion's garden, which was totally packed with pretty, colorful flowers. Ilo was super into it. She thanks Daria for being cool enough to let them crash there. While Russell was checking out the garden, he got hit with a flashback from his childhood, remembering he visited this place with his folks back in the day. He walked up to the mage and asked, "Yo, did you always own this place?" The mage cracked a joke, like, "The way you say that sounds like I stole it or something." Russell turned bright red, totally embarrassed. Jokes aside, Daria Snow White told him he was actually right. She explained the place used to belong to some merchant association. She bought it a few years back. It was just like Russell thought. This place used to be his family's property. Daria asked if he had more questions, but Russell was like, nah. He knew that after his family went down, everything got sold off dirt cheap, but he never thought he'd end up back here like this. A week flew by really fast. The elf got most of her mana back, and Daria noticed it right away. Elo thanked her again, saying she recovered thanks to Daria being so awesome. Then the mage asked if Elo had thought about helping with Russell's training like they talked about. Elo got it immediately and said, "If it's training, you probably mean spirit stuff, right?" She showed off some elemental spirits hanging around her. Daria was like, "Spot on," but then asked, "Where the heck is Russell?" The mage said she gave him some homework. Meanwhile, far from the mansion, Russell was literally falling off a cliff into a river. He popped out of the water, looking up and wondering why he kept screwing up. A few days ago, Daria took him to this spot where a river cuts through two cliffs. She asked him, "So what did you learn fighting that night? What do you gotta fix?" Russell thought about it and said, "I gotta get better at controlling distance." Daria nodded, explaining that for a mage, distance is everything. She told him to watch closely. Then, Daria Snow White started walking on air, telling him to imagine space folding up. In a split second, she zipped from one cliff to the other, like she teleported. That was the spatial distortion magic called Blink. Daria told Russell to try crossing the cliff using the same trick, saying this magic would be a killer weapon later on. Russell got a mission notification. Learn Blink and get a medium-grade mana stone. After splashing into the river, Russell dragged himself up the cliff. He knew Blink wasn't about level, it was about getting the logic. He got to the top, took a step, and Splash fell right back toward the river. A while later, he climbed up again. He wondered, is this training for Blink or just a hardcore workout? Russell tried to focus again, remembering what Daria said about imagining space folding. He took the first step, and flames wrapped around his feet. Looked like he was about to nail it, but then Daria Snow White popped up out of nowhere, messed up his groove, and down he went again. Daria Snow White went down to the bottom of the cliff by the river and told Russell, "All right, from now on, you're learning about spirit contracts." Elo was right next to her and would help with the training. The elf smiled and said she was happy to help out. Russell thanked her for being cool about it. Training started right away. Russell sat crisscross in front of a campfire, and Elo told him to close his eyes and imagine something related to fire. Daria watched from a distance. Ilo gave him ideas like the sunrise, the noon sun, sunlight, or burning wood. Any of those would work. Russell started thinking about fire, and his mana actually started turning into flames. Elo watched him and was shocked by how pure his mana was, super rare for a human. She stood behind him and said she'd guide his imagination. Inside Russell's mind, he was walking hand in hand with Elo down a path. Elo knew the door to spirit contracts was open to everyone. Most people don't know this, but humans, elves, or whatever, anyone can connect with spirits. They walked under a night sky, lit up by a huge moon and stars making constellations. They were surrounded by nature where everything is born, and elements like fire that destroy stuff and bring it back new. Spirits were everywhere, ready to be found if you just opened the doors. Daria was outside, watching Russell like a hawk. But inside his mind, Elo could feel his deep emotions. She wondered what this flood of feelings was in Russell S. heart, because it felt a lot like hate. Elo got a headache while inside Russell S. head. The visions and the places they walked through, the emotions in the kid's heart and the pain, it all felt like hate. But she knew that wasn't right. Outside, Daria kept watching closely. Suddenly, she saw a huge explosion of energy blast out from them, putting her on high alert. The bright mana shining off Russell with Elo behind him was blinding. When Russell woke up, he was back in Daria's mansion. He sat up with a killer headache and asked, "What happened?" All he remembered was the feeling of his mana blowing up. Then Russell saw Elo walk into his room. The elf had bandages on her arms. Elo told him to chill. She was fine. But he was worried and asked, "Did I do that to you?" He buried his face in his hands, feeling totally awful and apologizing. That night, Russell went to the garden to vibe with the weather. Daria watched him from a window and asked the elf, "So what exactly went down?" Elo said it was insane. When they got to the path leading to the spirit gate, Russell's mind unleashed such a crazy flood of emotions that they couldn't go any further. Daria was tripping, wondering what was up with that flood of feelings. Elo broke it down, saying even though it looked like hate, it was actually way closer to deep sadness. A sorrow so heavy, she couldn't believe Russell managed to keep a lid on it for that long. Next day, the squad linked up again. Daria told Russell they were starting some fresh training. He dipped his head, ready to grind, but what she said next totally threw him off. He'd be on cleanup duty. For a whole week, he had to work with the servants doing a deep clean. Daria also dropped the bomb that she and Elo were heading to the capital. She waved goodbye, and our guy waved back, telling them to stay safe on the road. Before dipping, Daria made sure to stress that this wasn't some kind of punishment. Russell just sighed and nodded along. Russell was plotting to practice his blink magic while cleaning, but Daria shut that down real quick. She banned him from using any magic for the week, leaving him totally confused. Still, Russell grabbed a mop and started following orders. Since magic was off the table, he decided to turn this cleaning gig into a physical workout. But just his luck, while he was trying to speedrun mopping the floor, he slipped and kicked a jar. The thing went flying and smashed on the ground. A maid walked up and asked who the heck cleans in such a rush. Then she looked down and mentioned that the broken vase was like one of Daria's absolute favorites. Before Daria left, she told Russell to do whatever the head maid said and introduce them. And yup, the woman standing right behind him was the head maid herself. He quickly apologized for the mess. She knew he couldn't use magic for a week, so she handed him a tiny rag and told him to clean exactly how she said from now on. She shadowed him everywhere, even micromanaging how he held vases while dusting the stands. When he was scrubbing the floor, she made him get every single corner. Russell was starting to get freaked out by the sheer amount of rules and orders. With the head maid constantly on his case, barking orders and complaining, Russell started suspecting this was actually some twisted training to toughen up his mind. Finally, after cleaning forever, lunchtime hit. The head maid told Russell to tag along with her. Our guy said he'd eat later, but she shot him a sharp look and repeated the order. Russell didn't have a choice but to follow her. In the staff kitchen, Russell saw a ton of people working. An old guy in a suit asked for his name, and he replied, "Russell Raymond." The guy repeated the name, making our MC think he might know him. But then, he just dropped a compliment instead. The old dude called Russell handsome, hyping up his black hair and red eyes. A maid nearby blushed and totally agreed with him. Suddenly, this buff guy appeared behind Russell saying he looked fit. He asked to touch our guy's biceps and just went for it without even waiting for a yes. The guy grinned like he was just messing around and slapped Russell on the back. Russell smiled back, but on the inside, he was crying tears of pain. He knew he had to put up with this for a week. He kept telling himself this had to be training. He really wanted to believe that. Over the next few days, Russell helped with all sorts of chores like hauling wood. He planned to blitz through everything so he could get a workout in. But after that, he hung out with the other staff outside the mansion, down by the river for a picnic, while they were making a toast. That buff guy slapped Russell on the back again, making him spit out his drink. Russell asked what his deal was, and the guy said since he's still a student, he shouldn't be drinking. Plus, he claimed Russell would lose his gains if he drank booze. Russell had totally forgotten he was supposed to be a student. Flashbacks of his mercenary days were too strong. An older servant piped up, saying it was fine for Russell to drink since he needed to learn the ropes from the adults. Besides, with a view this killer, it to be a sin not to drink. Russell silently agreed as he watched the sunset glowing behind the trees, reflecting off the river. Suddenly, the head maid showed up and cracked a joke, saying the real sin was drinking without any snacks. Everyone cracked up, and someone proposed a toast to the new family member. The head maid looked at Russell with this thoughtful vibe, like she was checking to see if he was actually vibing with his new environment. For the next few days, Russell's routine stayed the exact same. He cleaned, ate with the staff, and sometimes laid out on the grass at night to stare at the sky. Sometimes he'd even pick flowers and hang out with the others. As the days rolled by, Russell found himself sitting on a fountain the night before his cleaning training was supposed to end. He kept wondering what this weird, unsatisfied feeling was that kept bugging him. While he was gazing up at the sky, the headmaid walked up, mentioning that it looked like Russell really liked that spot. Russell stood up to say hey, and she, adjusting her glasses, asked how many times a day he did that. Russell laughed, asking if he did it too much, explaining it was just an unconscious habit. Then she asked if there was a reason he always chilled in that part of the garden. Russell gave a vague answer, saying that being there made him remember certain people. The maid mentioned she heard mages could teleport, and asked why he didn't just warp over to see the people he was thinking about. Russell told her teleport magic is super hard, and even if he could use it, there were some places he just couldn't go. The headmaid said she always thought mages didn't care about anything. Before leaving him alone, she mentioned that tomorrow would be his last day of cleaning, so he should give it his all until the end. Russell said he got it, and then she said something that totally caught him off guard. I don't know much about magic, but I think you are a good person, Russell. The dude was shocked by her words, but the maid broke the mood right after, joking that if he didn't become a top-tier mage, she'd hire him as a servant. A while later, Daria and Elo got back to the mansion. Our main guy was the first to welcome them back. They asked how his week went, and Russell told them he was doing good. So, Daria asked Russell to hang out in the garden. She was like, "You must have been through hell this week." But Russell was all, "Nah, I'm good." The mage explained they were hunting for a cure to fix Elo's lost mana, since elf mana is super special. Plus, she had to check some stuff in the archives. Russell said Daria must have been swamped. Then, out of nowhere, Daria just stopped walking. She dropped the news that this place used to belong to the Raymond family. Russell looked down, feeling all kinds of messed up about it. The mage mentioned that Elo talked about this storm of emotions in Russell's heart, blocking him from getting to the spirit door. She asked if he was pissed, sad, or feeling played. Russell was like, yeah, all of that. Daria said she remembered. The first time she saw him struggling to learn magic all by himself. Looking at him now, she saw a lonely leader trying to rebuild his family. Then she told Russell he should keep the estate. Russell was totally shocked and asked what the heck she meant. The mage clarified she wasn't just handing it over for free. He had to become a war mage for the Tower of Flames and protect the country. She ordered him to make a ton of cash to buy the property back. Daria also asked if he finally got that he didn't have to fight alone. Russell went back to training with Elo. The elf explained that the last time they got close to the spirit door, she didn't actually wake up his mind, just guided him subconsciously. This time, she wanted to do it right so they could reach the door together. Russell was worried he'd get hurt again. The elf gave him a thumbs up, saying they bought plenty of medicine, so it was all good. Russell didn't want to argue, so he just went with it. Ilo told him to close his eyes and think about fire, like last time, so she could wake him in his imagination. The protagonist could see the elf in his head. He looked down at his own hand. The place was chill, exactly like before, but that emotional storm was still raging up ahead. They could see the glowing path on the other side, but getting to the source leading to the spirit door was going to be tough. Russell took a few steps toward the storm. Ilo tried to warn him about the danger, but it was too late. The waves pushed him back hard. But right then, Russell finally understood his feelings. Graduating from the academy, picking a tower, rebuilding his family, and getting revenge for his dad. He apologized to Elo, saying he just couldn't have let go of that stuff. Then Russell heard Daria's voice talking to the headmaid, who said the kid was a good person. The mage asked if the woman had ever left him alone, and she said nope. Russell remembered Hilbert, the workers, what the maid said, and especially what Daria told him. He didn't have to fight by himself. With tears in his eyes, Russell stood up in his mind. He knew he couldn't ditch his feelings, but he could try to get over them. He remembered Daria's advice about folding space and walked toward the storm again. Elo tried to stop him, screaming it was dangerous, but he was chill. Even if he fell, he wasn't alone anymore. His feet caught fire as he took one step after another. Finally, he used Blink, leaving Elo behind and landing on the other side of the storm. Standing before the spirit door, Elo saw him use Blink with her own eyes. Crossing over meant Russell finally finished the mission. After crossing the storm, he wondered what to do next, while staring at the huge glowing gate in front of him. Just then, Elo told him to go through the door. Russell was surprised he could still talk to her, but she explained it was cause their manas were linked. Then Russell got a mission to make a contract with a spirit. He had to summon one like Elo said, and bond with it. Following the elf's lead, Russell put his hand on the gate of light and asked, "What now?" Elo said it was up to the spirits now. He just had to reach out and wait, since nobody knew who would show up and he couldn't pick. That was all they could do. Russell just rolled with it, waiting patiently and deciding he wouldn't trip if no spirit showed up. He was already grateful for every moment that got him there. While he was lost in thought, Russell didn't even notice when a massive red dragon came up to the spirit gate and touched his hand. When he woke up, there was a baby spirit in his lap. The little thing was red, with yellow eyes and tiny teeth, looking at Russell like the cutest thing ever. Elo congratulated him on the new contract. Daria smiled and said there was even more to celebrate. Russell realized he hit the fourth circle. The great mage said he broke through a huge mental wall. Russell then checked the mission notification and saw he got some extra rewards. Meanwhile, the little spirit flew up and landed on Russell's head to nap. Ilo walked over, noting that this didn't look like any ordinary spirit. She petted the little guy and picked him up, suggesting Russell give him a proper name, since naming him would seal the deal. She handed the spirit back to him. Elo and Daria waited, dying to know what name Russell would pick for his new buddy. Looking at the little spirit in his hands, all Russell saw was red. He thought about calling him Pepper, which totally freaked out the three women. Russell laughed, saying he was just messing around. Then he asked, "How about Pepper?" The little spirit smiled at the name. Elo thought it was super cute, and Daria didn't think it was bad. Little did they know, Russell was actually shortening Pepper. Daria said to celebrate, they'd start special training tomorrow. Elo also announced she'd teach him about spirits. Russell was stoked for that, holding the adorable spirit and feeling happy. 1 month later, it was time for the towers to pick their students. Some teachers were gossiping about the cutoff numbers, but others were like, nah, that stuff's already been decided. Every semester, each tower picks people to train. Then this carriage rolls up, announcing the judge from the Royal White Tower is here. Next up was the Yellow Tower judge, with the Spear Tower guy getting announced right after. Even the teachers were getting all hyped up. Some of them, with their own agendas, were whispering about doing more for the chosen students not cause they care, but just to make the school look good. Sketchy. Professor Hilbert wasn't having it. He couldn't figure out how these clowns called themselves teachers when they only cared about the talented kids. Finally, the Royal Flame Tower judge showed up. A massive hand grabbed the carriage door, flung it open, and this huge dude stepped out, scaring the crap out of the students. Vermilion Olsen. Hilbert wondered what the hell he was doing here. Olsen looked around, like he was hunting for someone. But he didn't find the person he was looking for, so he figured they hadn't shown up yet. Hilbert thought Olsen being here meant Daria wasn't going to pick Russell. Actually, the prof hadn't even seen Russell yet. Just then, a streak of fire tore across the sky. It was our main character, using Blink to crash the party. Olsen instantly felt the power of Russell's magic when he landed on a building opposite the school. Russell let out a sigh, relieved he wasn't late. Then they locked eyes, and the MC knew exactly who that big guy was. Olsen turned to head inside with a grin, knowing things were about to get fun. He was already itching to take Russell on. Flashback to when he was leaving Mage Daria's place. The protagonist thanked her for everything and told Elo to get back home safe. He also told the head maid he'd be back, but next time as the owner of the estate, so she better take care of the place. Russell's time there was short, but he was grateful. Daria asked if he was sure he didn't need a ride. He said running back would be way faster, or he'd definitely be late. Then Daria asked Russell for a favor. She wanted him to give a letter to Hilbert at the academy. Russell promised he'd do it, making the old mage thank him. When Russell got to Professor Hilbert's office, the prof was just relieved he made it on time. He said helping with the selection would be tough cause of some sudden drama. But Russell told him to chill, it was all good. Then the prof gave him some advice. Don't let Vermilion Olsen get under his skin. Hilbert warned him that for this selection, just trying his best wouldn't cut it. Russell had to be the best. The protagonist just smiled and told him not to worry. Russell's mission was to show an overwhelming gap in power. He had to crush the other candidates and get props from both selection judges. Round 1 was a written exam. Russell didn't think the exam was hard at all, seeing as he'd failed it plenty of times in his past life. The only thing bugging him right now was that letter from Daria. He remembered that after delivering it, Professor Hilbert would start traveling constantly, skipping classes, and eventually take a sabbatical right when a tragedy would hit. Russell didn't know the deets, but he knew the prof probably took a mission way too dangerous, even for a high-level Flame Tower mage. When the written scores dropped, Russell had the highest grade, shocking everyone and making them super jealous. Russell wondered if he could somehow stop the tragedy heading for Hilbert. Soon enough, the second round started, the interview test. Students had to go in when their names were called. It wasn't long before it was Russell's turn to face the judges. The protagonist was still thinking about what was going to happen, since signs of change were already popping up. Like Olsen, he wasn't a judge in the past life. Russell knew he could change the future, and he had to join the Flame Tower to stop what was coming for Hilbert. To do that, he needed the judges to respect him. One of the judges read the rules, saying that when they asked questions, Russell had to give short verbal answers. A female judge started off by asking about a formula from 300 years ago. Right in front of everyone, Russell answered by explaining, "You got to apply a material cycle concept to tweak the formula." Russell realized the interview questions were actually way easier than the written test. But there was another challenge in round 2, enduring the mana pressure from the judges. In his past life, he always failed this part, but this time was different. Thanks to his leveled-up stats, he answered questions easily, completely ignoring the pressure coming from the judges. One judge praised Russell to the others, saying the kid didn't even flinch in a mana storm. Vermilion Olsen just smirked and said the pressure was too weak. Then he unleashed way more power, trying to crush Russell. The protagonist felt the sudden heavy vibes and frowned. The other judges saw what Vermilion Olsen was doing and secretly called him crazy. They thought the candidate was going to get hurt if he kept it up, but when they looked at Russell, even though his expression changed a bit, he was handling it like a pro. One judge was shocked, because even the teachers reading files nearby were struggling. He started wanting this genius for himself, and he wasn't the only one. A lot of them felt the same way. In no time, Russell had the approval of 9 out of 10 judges. Seeing the protagonist handle the heat, Olsen got all hyped and decided to test Russell even more, blasting him with a much stronger aura. It quickly turned into a full-on aura battle. One of the judges got annoyed and told Olsen to knock it off, since they still had more interviews to do. Vermilion Olsen clicked his tongue, saying things were finally starting to get fun. The teachers were just relieved they actually survived. Luia gave Russell props, telling him he could bounce, and then called the next candidate. Russell went back to his seat in the hallway, totally relieved, thinking he might be actually passed out. Looking at how the scouting mission was going, he sighed because it still wasn't enough. He smiled sarcastically, because Olsen didn't seem like an easy guy to deal with. After the interviews, the judges started gossiping about Russell. They found out he was the guy the Flame Tower Master was watching. Everyone was focused on him, which honestly seemed like a bummer for them. The judge lady who asked Russell the first question asked if Olsen was going to start disciplining him like a disciple already. Olsen turned to face the woman and asked, who decided Russell had become one of his juniors anyway? The judge backed off, trying to explain herself, but Olsen just turned his back with a total scowl. Olsen remembered a battle where enemy knights attacked his juniors. They tried to defend themselves with barriers, but they were too weak and got wrecked fast. Olsen still remembered the tears of resentment he cried seeing the young ones fall. If that person went down, they'd all go down together. The next day, the third round of the screening test kicked off. An organizer announced the test would be a treasure hunt in the lush Walker Hill forest, where they had to find green mana stones. Points would be given based on how many stones they got and the order they came back. Hearing the rules, Russell knew everyone would be desperately trying to steal stones from each other. The organizer then told the candidates to line up. Russell hadn't gotten all the acknowledgements yet and wondered if Olsen would recognize him if he won this test. When the test started, everyone rushed into the forest. Russell knew there was only one thing to do right then. He quickly got to the forest and wondered if he should call a certain being out. He summoned flames in his hands, knowing the little guy must be suffocating. From the flames, the little spirit Pepper popped out. Russell apologized for not letting the spirit out earlier, since he couldn't use magic at school. The little spirit smiled super cute, showing his tiny teeth to Russell. The protagonist then asked for the spirit's help. Putting his hand in his spatial storage, he pulled out a mana stone and told the spirit to find stones like that. The spirit sniffed the stone and started flying, trying to track them down. Russell knew spirits that had crossed the mana world could detect even the faintest trace of magic. Arriving at a spot, the little spirit turned to look at Russell, signaling he found something. Russell followed the little dragon, who kept sniffing around. Without noticing, some trees had weird symbols on them. In a dark house, a hooded man was lifting another guy by his collar, asking where the mage was, the one the guy in front of him had made a trade with. The man claimed he didn't know anything, just that he sold materials for a ritual. The hooded man squeezed the guy, asking if he knew the materials were for a pagan ritual. Knowing pagan rituals were linked to the dead, the man got scared. The hooded man threw him against the wall, stating that helping a cult was the same as betraying the kingdom. He then looked deep into the seller's eyes, asking again where the mage was. The man claimed again that he didn't know. The only info he had was about a woman who burned people and took a disciple. The cultist was going after that disciple. The hooded man hurried to his new destination. He knew if the cult was against a woman, it had to be his teacher. Hilbert, who revealed himself to be the hooded man, knew Russell was in trouble and that the whole selection test was in danger. Night had already fallen. One of the students was walking aimlessly, complaining about not finding any more mana stones. He was annoyed he couldn't create light in the dark forest, afraid of becoming a target. Suddenly, the kid got spooked when something shook the bushes ahead. He quickly used a wind arrow, knocking down whatever moved the bush. He wondered if what was in front of him was another candidate, and planned to bail so he wouldn't get blamed if he seriously hurt another competitor. However, his steps stopped when he realized if it was a competitor, they should have mana stones on them. But when he turned around, he saw that what he hit wasn't there anymore. He felt a chill noticing something was behind him, and let out a scream as he turned to see what was there. Meanwhile, Russell, who had followed the little dragon, seemed to have reached the center of the forest. The little dragon sniffed a bag and found a bunch of green mana stones. Russell wondered why there were so many mana stones there, thinking something seemed sketchy, while Pepper asked for praise. Russell bent down and, besides the mana stones, found a golem-esque core. Picking it up, he noticed it was broken, looking like the core was damaged before a golem was even summoned. Russell wondered who could have done this when Pepper warned him of an incoming attack. Russell realized he was under attack. Stones shot out of the ground like spikes, trying to pierce Russell, who jumped to dodge. The protagonist noticed the earth magic was turning into light magic when several spheres tried to hit him, forcing him to dodge again. It was likely this wasn't just one person's work. Suddenly, ice arrows were fired at Russell's back. But Pepper acted fast, launching a fire breath that melted the arrows. Russell praised the little dragon for saving him. The protagonist then used fire magic to create some arrows, destroying the light spheres that exploded into thick smoke. In the middle of the smoke, Russell found himself surrounded. The first one to show up was an honor student selected by the tower. Russell called them cowards for using tactics like that. The student yelled furiously, asking how a bastard like Russell found the mana stones first. The student was convinced they were the only ones who knew the location of the mana stones, and wondered how Russell found them. Then he noticed the spirit. The guy hired by the protagonist realized how Russell had snagged the stones so fast. The other students caught on too. One dude couldn't believe Russell had been hiding that kind of power the whole time. Russell just laughed, asking what was so big about finding some rocks quickly, like he didn't have the right to find them or something. Then he dropped a theory, saying it looked like some students were making secret deals with the teachers. The student in front of him clicked his tongue, giving away that he'd been busted. Russell told him he didn't want to get mixed up with their mess, and they'd better get out of his way. The guy got pissed and unleashed his mana, rushing in to attack the protagonist. But Russell flashed right behind him, telling him he might want to rethink that before he regrets it. They didn't even see him move, but they knew he must have used blink magic. Suddenly, Pepper started growling. Russell looked toward the forest where the leaves were rustling. He asked the student if the teachers helping them had mentioned anything about a destroyed golem core. The guy said no. Other students came out of the woods, saying they thought it was weird too. Knowing something was coming, Russell started channeling his fire mana. The birds in the forest were freaking out, taking flight. Something was coming fast toward the clearing. Russell was the first to spot the terrifying creatures closing in. They were undead. The students were terrified, wondering how the hell those things got into the testing area. The first guy who tried to fight Russell was the first one planning to bail, but when he tried to run, he realized they were surrounded. Dozens, maybe hundreds of undead surrounded the clearing, leaving zero room to escape. Russell acted fast, throwing up a firewall around him and the other students. They were shocked to see fourth circle magic. Russell told everyone to cover a direction and take out any undead that made it past the fire. The students froze up in fear, but the protagonist yelled at them to snap out of it and fight back. They nodded, getting with the program. The older student sighed, thankful he hadn't started a fight with Russell, because that would have ended badly. But then he realized something really messed up was happening. The undead were charging, throwing themselves at the firewall. The four of them inside were holding their ground. But Russell knew the firewall wouldn't last forever. They needed to find the sorcerer who summoned these things. In the forest, two people watched the undead attack the flames, laughing and wondering how long the kid chosen by the Flame Tower Master would last. The undead kept pushing against the firewall, while Russell and the others dealt with them. These undead were created by heretics seeking forbidden magic, blaspheming by summoning such creatures. In the past, they'd been crushed by Daria and her fire magic. Russell wondered if these attackers were leftovers from those heretics, and what they were planning by getting so close to the Magic Academy as Forest. Then it hit him. They might be after him. Despite that, the protagonist knew he had to focus on the fight. The magic the heretics used was a curse type known for its low mana cost. The longer this battle dragged on, the worse it'd be for him. So the protagonist told everyone to use their mana efficiently, dial back the firepower, and aim for the vital spots. Easier said than done for the students, though. One of them said the selection judges should be arriving soon. They just had to hold out until then. But another student said they weren't coming, which freaked out the third guy. Russell confirmed that was probably true. No way the judges from the capital's magic towers could sense the evil energy. The heretics probably used a barrier spell to hide their mana presence. Russell remembered a symbol he'd seen on a tree, but had ignored. The cowardly student was shaking, knowing they'd have to deal with all these undead on their own. One student, who actually listened to Russell, was trying to shrink his arrows but make them sharper. Meanwhile, the coward was whining about how to fight efficiently while watching his classmates. The mages who summoned the undead noticed the students were trying to save mana. One mage said that even if he SEA kid, Russell is still that womaness disciple. Suddenly, he summoned a monster and asked what would happen if a situation popped up where they couldn't save magic. The monster charged fast, smashing through the firewall and scaring the hell out of the four of them as they faced a troll. The light magic student attacked first. His orbs shot light beams that hit the troll, but didn't seem to do a damn thing. The monster roared, grabbed the sword on its back, and got ready to strike. When Russell stepped up using his flame lance magic to hit the troll, the monster burst into flames and went down. After the attack, Russell watched the troll turn to ash. The mages were shocked and pissed to see Russell take down the troll with just one hit. One student could feel the power of Russell's fifth circle magic and realized the guy was on a whole different level. Wondering if he was really a student like them, Russell looked around for Pepper. The little dragon was up in the sky. He was using his body flames to spin in a circle, like he was signaling a spot. Russell got what the spirit was trying to say. He was pointing out where the mages were hiding. Russell gripped his flame lance again and put his whole body into the move. One student wondered what he was doing, watching Russell focus all his strength into the lance to throw it. The lance flew fast toward the mages, who tried to dodge. Instead of dodging, they tried to block it. A bunch of undead popped up between them and the flame lance. But all they saw was a flash of fire that disintegrated the summoned undead and caused an explosion when it hit the mages. Russell wondered if he'd hit them. The skeletons fell, but one mage was still standing, using the other guy as a shield. The wizard guy claimed that Daria had created a total monster and revealed they were saving the target to use against the judges, but looks like they gotta use it on Russell instead. Then boom! The main character notices a bunch of students being held hostage by these creepy skeletons. Like out of nowhere, at least a dozen of them just popped up. Hilbert finally showed his face at the academy again. Some teachers tried to stop him because he was heading straight for the restricted zone where only judges are allowed, but he didn't care. Hilbert totally ignored them and barged into the room. He scanned the place for Ulson, and when he found him, he dropped some words that left the red-haired dude completely shook. Those cultist freaks are on the move. They re-gunning for Russell, and the exam candidates are in deep trouble too. Ulson stood up, absolutely furious, with insane mana overflowing from his body. How dare they start crap right under my nose? Meanwhile, in the forest, that bald cultist threatened that if Russell moved even a muscle, he'd turn the hostage students into undead soldiers. Sick, right? He wasn't bluffing either. The skeletons were already in attack position, ready to strike. Russell noticed the cultists had gagged the students so they couldn't cast any spells. Smart, but dirty. He weighed his options. He could use Blink to get close to the cultist, but if the guy gave the order before he got there, it'd be game over for all the hostages. Seeing he had the upper hand, the cultist told Russell not to resist and to come closer, calling him the child of the flame tower. That just confirmed it for Russell. He was definitely the target. So Russell started walking toward the creep. The cultist laughed, actually impressed, saying he couldn't believe Russell was sacrificing himself just to free his hostage friends. Russell totally scoffed at that. Friends? Yeah, right. Like they're actually friends. They call you weak if you suck, and strong if you're powerful. That's it. Disdain, hate, greed. These people are just jealous losers. The cultist went quiet while Russell kept going. You probably don't get it, but protecting people is a guardian's duty. The cultists started cracking up, saying that in a world where the strong crush the weak, stuff like mission and justice is just ridiculous. To him, Russell's words were just a big speech coming from some weakling. Then Russell fired back, telling the cultist to take a look in the mirror, a dude who couldn't even handle the job by himself. Burn. The MC noticed a skeleton coming at him, and it tied up his mouth. The cultist then said he'd take Russell's advice and finish him off with his own bare hands. He used this magic where bones just appeared and fused into a spear. He said it was a shame he couldn't hear Russell scream, but hey, he didn't have a choice. As the cultist walked toward him, Russell was already prepped for what was coming next. There was this one spell that didn't need any chanting and could be cast straight from his mind. When he finished his last mission, he got a bonus reward. A ring, a magic artifact. Right then, Russell triggered the magic of the cloud ring. It looked like a ring, sure, but it could turn into a lightning cloud when he needed it. Plus, it gets way more powerful as the user gets stronger. A cloud formed in the sky, which the cultist hadn't even noticed yet, while he was rambling about starting his revenge on Russell. The second the cultist got distracted, Russell used the artifact's magic to wreck everyone. Looking like he was made of lightning itself, he called down the thunder to strike them all. A blinding bolt came down from the sky, flashing everyone out and destroying everything with pure power. The cultist was still standing for a sec, but he got instantly toasted by the lightning and then just dropped. A female student ran over to help Russell get untied. She was like, "I can't believe you thought to use a magic artifact in a spot like that. That was insane." Russell just thanked her for the props, but she said they should be thanking him and suggested they call the judges, fast. Looking at the hostages, it seemed like everyone needed medical attention. Russell told her the judges would be there any minute. The girl asked, How do you know? He explained that a buddy of his was guiding them. While they were talking, Pepper was literally burning a straight line of trees to signal the path for the judges. It seemed like Russell was always 10 steps ahead of everyone else. Then, he looked down at his hand. The cloud ring was draining way more mana than he expected. As they walked away, they didn't realize the cultist was still alive. And then, the guy used some forbidden magic. I devote to you my life, my longevity, and even my afterlife. Russell and the others felt the magic, and suddenly a bunch of skeletons burst from the ground, fusing together and getting bigger. The cultist summoned a giant freaking skeleton. The thing was, like, way bigger than a normal human. Russell realized this magic was beyond even the fifth circle. The girl yelled at everyone to run for the forest and hide. The first one to bolt was that coward who led the others to attack Russell. But halfway there, he remembered the bag of mana stones. The girl was ready to run too, but she noticed Russell was staying behind. She was like, "What are you doing?" He told her the skeleton was locked onto him, and he was the only one who could buy enough time until the judges showed up, who were tearing through the forest right now. Russell was going to face the skeleton alone, but the girl knew he had to be low on mana and wondered what the hell he was going to do. The giant skeleton started swinging. Its hits weren't something Russell could just block with a shield. So he decided to dodge, cause getting hit even once would be super dangerous. Flaming spear in hand, he circled the skeleton and hurled the spear right at it. The spear hit, but the skeleton was still standing, even with the damage. Russell knew this was going to be a tough fight. And then he realized the thing could regenerate too. Suddenly, Russell saw something go into the ground. The earth shook as a bone tail burst out and attacked him. After the first strike, the tail kept targeting him. He tried to blast it with fire magic, but he was too slow. Luckily, someone cast an ice spell, freezing the tip of the tail and stopping it cold. He looked over and saw it was the girl who had untied him earlier. She was like, "Russell saved my life, so no way I am ditching him just to save myself." She blasted a bunch of ice arrows at the skeleton, freezing it up. She told him that just like Russell said, this is what a guardian is supposed to do. While she was talking, the students trying to bail actually stopped. The coward holding the bag of mana stones asked what they were doing, like, "Have you guys lost your minds?" He kept running, yelling that it wasn't his problem if they got wrecked. Somewhere else, that cultist dude who got used as a meat shield finally woke up. He saw the giant skeleton and realized it was sacrifice magic. He laughed, saying it totally suited his buddy who tried to survive on his own. Behind Russell, the whole squad came back. One guy, the one stuck in the firewall with him, apologized for being late. Not exactly Russell's plan, but hey, it works. The main guy smirked and fired up his flame spear magic again. If they wanted to throw hands, he wouldn't stop them, but he told them straight, if you want to live, you gotta win. Russell chucked the flame spear and told the students to listen up. He said he'd make an opening, so they better give it everything they've got. Russell summoned another flame spear. That massive fire spell ripped through the sky, aiming right for the skeleton's face. Then Russell gave the signal to attack. A bunch of skills flew through the air right after the spear, smashing the skeleton and causing a huge explosion. When the smoke cleared, the thing was still alive. Russell cursed under his breath and planned to use the spear one more time. He kept trying, even though he was totally out of mana. He knew everyone was risking it all, but they came back to face the danger for the Guardian mission, and for him. The judges should be on their way, so they had to push harder. Russell had to protect everyone. His eyes shifted to dragon eyes as the flame spear lit up his hand again. He poured every drop of magic he had into it and took aim. He let it fly, sending the fire magic streaking across the sky. Once again, the students jumped on the chance to attack together. The flame spear mixed with all their skills into a hit as big as the giant skeleton itself. Even from far away, the teachers could see the giant skeleton and the students duking it out. Vermilion Olsen grit his teeth, wondering what those weaklings were doing instead of running away. He believed being fragile was just a weakness. If one person falls, the rest go down. But watching the fight unfold, Daria Snow White realized that because they re-fragile. If one gets up, the rest follow. The last blast knocked the giant skeleton down, but the cultist wasn't done yet. That creep inside the skeleton kept burning his mana to make it stand up again, but it was too little, too late. The judges finally showed up. Olsen attacked first with overheat. He aimed those superheated flames right at the cultist to wipe that evil scumbag out. His purplish-red flames completely destroyed the skeleton. The kids were shook. Not just the skeleton, but the whole chunk of forest behind it was just gone from the attack. Russell cracked a joke at Olsen, saying if he was going to show up, he should have been faster. Then the main guy blacked out and fell into Hilbert's arms. Seeing that, Olsen gave the kid a nod of approval. When Russell woke up, he was back at the academy, staring at a ceiling light and hearing Hilbert's voice. He asked the prof if the other candidates were safe. Hilbert said yeah, thanks to Russell. That was a huge load off his mind. Hilbert said everyone was saying the same thing. If Russell hadn't have been there, it would have been a total tragedy. Russell played it cool, saying he had help. Then Hilbert asked if he was curious about the test results. The main guy had totally forgotten about that part. The prof said there was a lot to consider. Since those heretic freaks attacked the test area, the task didn't even matter anymore. In a situation like that, teamwork meant way more than just competing. Keeping that in mind, all the judges agreed that the person who deserved the top score was none other than Russell. The protagonist was shocked, tearing up as he thanked the prof. He could finally graduate. Then Hilbert explained that they opened an investigation on those heretics to figure out exactly who was pulling the strings behind all this mess. Under Daria's lead, they'd find the source soon. Then the protagonist dropped a bomb. There was actually a second heretic. That surprised the prof. That creep managed to bail during the chaos, swearing revenge for getting humiliated by the Flame Tower rookie. Olsen walked into the infirmary, saying it looked like they let the other one slip away. He walked up to Russell, asking for a minute. Hilbert stepped in front, saying the kid needed rest, but Russell told him to chill, said he was fine. So they went to a quiet spot near the academy. The redhead told the protagonist he must be felt held back fighting those weaklings. Vermilion Olsen said he still thought being fragile was a weakness, and he hadn't changed his mind on that. Surprisingly, Russell agreed. But he said weakness exists, so the strong can get stronger by protecting the weak. And the weak can grow while being protected by the strong. That way, nobody gets left behind, and everyone moves forward together. Olsen went quiet, letting that sink in, then admitted it wasn't a bad answer. He tossed a bag to the main guy and told him to open it. Russell opened it and found the Flame Tower robe inside. Then Olsen told him not to rush if he wanted to join the Flame Tower. There was one more test. The protagonist was like, "What?" He totally thought the selection test was over. Olsen laid it out. This test was some ancient tradition. He drew a circle around himself and told Russell to try and shove him out using whatever magic he had. If Russell pulled it off, he'd win. But if he choked, there'd be hell to pay. Russell got totally hyped, whipped out some mana stones from his inventory, chugged them down, and warned Olsen not to regret it later, because he did say Russell could use any magic he wanted. Back at the academy, Hilbert felt the ground quake and sprinted to check the scene. At the testing spot, Olsen was covered in lightning, with one foot totally out of the circle. The guy was decked out in armor on par with the fifth circle, looking completely shook that this kid actually pushed him back. Right then, a worried voice cut in. Hilbert walked up to Olsen, asking what the hell he was doing. The prof screamed at the judge of the Tower of Flames, "I can't believe you cornered the kid when he hasn't even recovered yet." Olsen coughed and claimed it was just a Tower of Flames tradition, but Hilbert's words made him sweat, telling him that was something only a geezer would do. All ticked off, Olsen insisted he was just trying to beat some discipline into Russell before he joined the rest of the tower crew. Hilbert snapped back, saying if they used any more of that kind of discipline, the Academy's pillars and walls would come crashing down. Then he walked over to the protagonist, apologizing for Olsen, but Russell just laughed it off. Then Olsen dropped a bomb. Out of everyone who'd ever taken that test, only one person had ever passed. And actually, it was him, Russell. The guy had used the flaming spear combined with the cloud ring to unleash a double attack. With some help from Pepper, his summoned spirit, Russell managed to blindside Olsen with a surprise hit. Hilbert was totally stunned to find out Russell actually had a summoned spirit. The protagonist summoned Pepper right then, introducing the little guy to the professor. The two dudes stared at the little dragon with the huge eyes, and after a moment of silence, they totally melted from the cuteness. Some time passed, and during graduation, Russell gave the speech, soaking up the applause from the students. Then he headed back inside the academy, where he heard Professor Hilbert mention that the speech was totally fitting for the top student. Russell thanked the prof, who said that since Russell wasn't a student anymore, he could just call him senior brother. Hilbert asked if the kid had a crash pad in the capital yet. Russell said he was thinking about grabbing a small room on the outskirts of the city. The prof offered up his own place to Russell, since he couldn't go back home until his contract with the academy was up. Russell asked if that was really cool to do, and the professor confirmed it, saying it was his idea in the first place. Hilbert revealed he'd bought the house from Daria, which gave the protagonist a major sense of déjà vu. While he was packing his gear, Russell, with Pepper's help, got a notification that the graduation quest was complete. One of the rewards was a total mystery. When he claimed the loot, it turned out to be a map. At first, he thought it to be the same map as last time, but it was totally different and kind of familiar. It was a map of Cooley Island, a place forgotten by humans where nobody was allowed to set foot. A spot crawling with magic beasts and extremely dangerous. Unless you were at least a sixth circle mage. Russell was dying to know what this opportunity actually meant. He remembered the king's horn that had been jammed into him. Did that thing just want him to get buff, or was there some deeper game being played? Russell didn't know for sure yet, but he knew one thing. He had to get stronger, because he had a ton of stuff to protect. Inside the carriage, Olsen asked the protagonist if this was his first time hitting up the Capitol. Russell admitted he'd been there before, which reminded Olsen that the kid in front of him was a Raymond. Then Russell had a question for Olsen. He wanted to know if the gig assigned to Professor Hilbert was somehow tied to the heretics, since Hilbert's return lined up exactly with the heretic attack. Olsen laughed, realizing the kid was pretty sharp. He confirmed that was exactly it. Hilbert's mission was to keep tabs on the heretic society, though he wasn't sure if he could even call them a society. Russell said he wanted to help with the mission too. Vermilion Olsen asked if he meant he wanted to track the heretics too. Vermilion Olsen stared at the protagonist, trying to see if he was bluffing, but he caught that confident look on his face. Pumped up, Olsen shouted, "All right, you're a man now, you gotta dream big. I'll let the master know about this." The protagonist said thanks, but Olsen had a condition. Before they hit the Capitol, Russell had to learn a spell Olsen was going to teach him. Olsen revealed the magic was called Overheat. It was a one-shot kill spell. Olsen sparked up some mana on his finger, explaining that the magic, Overheat, involved focusing mana into a specific spot. He compared it to gathering mana and firing it off like a slingshot. Then Olsen asked if Russell could pull off that technique. Over the next few days, whether they were chilling or the carriage was rolling down the road, Russell kept grinding on that spell. He tried gathering mana in his hand, and finally, on a snowy day, they pulled up to a rocky cliff. When Russell unleashed Overheat, a massive hole got blasted into the wall, totally exceeding Olsen's expectations. He'd never seen anyone this talented before. After casting the spell, Russell felt his hand shaking. Olsen explained that, as he probably knew, Overheat was super demanding on focus, and so you had to watch your back for counterattacks after using it. Russell mentioned that was risky against strong enemies, but Olsen shot back that it wasn't always the case. He told Russell to remember that the best defense was actually the strongest offense. You never knew when someone stronger might show up, and the strong usually underestimated the weak. When their guard was down, that was the perfect time to pull a trick out of your sleeve and snatch the win. When Russell finally hit the Capitol, he noticed other people arriving too. He spotted a guy with glasses and blue clothes. Helping an older guy out of the carriage, Russell looked at him and was like, "Wait, I know those glasses." Took forever, but he finally ran into Daria again. The dude thanked her, cause honestly she carried him to his new rank. Then the mage gave him props for joining the Tower of Flames. She was like, "Wild timing, you showed up exactly when the Spear Tower Master did." Turns out the two people Russell met were actually Alan Page, a mage from the Spear Tower, and the big boss himself, Hemingway Melville. Melville was totally shocked that Daria picked today of all days to meet up. He called her out, saying she just wanted to flex her new student. Russell felt super awkward hearing that, but Daria was like, "Yeah, so what?" She straight up called Russell a hero. Dude took down a heretic while he was basically a kid. She asked if he had a problem with her bragging, considering that's all she talks about lately. Russell was checking out Alan Page. That weirdo genius is gonna hit the sixth circle in just a few years. Russell owed the guy big time from his past life, so seeing him again was a trip. Then Melville jumped in, saying he had a real reason to brag. He claimed Alan's skills were just objectively better. Olsen was standing there like, "Oh boy, here we go again." Daria's face turned beet red with rage. She yelled that her student was younger. Melville just shrugged, saying he already factored that in. The vibe in the room got heated fast with those two going at it. Alan walked over to the armchair where Melville was sitting, started massaging his master's back and smiled. He told them Melville isn't usually this extra, he only acts like a giant baby around Daria. Melville spun around, totally shocked his student would roast him like that. Alan tried to chill him out, saying, "Relax or you'll lose your youth." That made the old man nervous. Then Alan whispered in his ear, reminding him they still had to visit the royal palace. Alan apologized and shook Russell's hand. Russell was kinda bummed. He really wanted to show off his magic to the guy. Olsen was just watching, but he totally understood the vibe behind those words. Melville busted out laughing, calling him cheeky. He unleashed his mana, asking where that confidence came from. Suddenly, the room was flooded with power. It felt like Russell was drowning in the ocean. The Spear Tower Master was actually surprised the kid could handle it at his age. Then he turned to the Flame Tower Master and proposed a bet. He wanted 5 years. If Russell could catch up to Alan in 5 years, he'd hand over 2 of his magic relics. Russell was shook. Magic relics are straight-up artifacts from the Age of Myths. Even the weakest one is on the level of the 7th circle. Daria cut the time to 3 years, which totally freaked Melville out. She stood up and said if Russell didn't catch up to Alan in 3 years, she'd give up her mythic relics. The old guy grinned, thinking he had this in the bag. Daria told him to get the artifacts ready. Melville got up to leave, saying it was a pretty warm welcome. Alan said bye and followed Melville out. While they were walking down the tower, Alan asked if betting those mythic relics was really okay. The Spear Tower Master said, "Nope. That's why Alan better not slack off." The young mage was like, "You got it." After they left, Olsen yelled at Russell for not staying quiet on his first day. Our main guy just laughed it off awkwardly. Then Daria asked Russell if he seriously wanted the job of tracking the cult members. He said yes. She used her mana to reveal a paper, a spy report. She read that they found traces of the cult members who attacked the academy. They were hiding in Sudra, the neutral city. The cultist was trying to bolt solo. Russell knew Sudra. It's basically a paradise for criminals. Dude picked a solid spot to hide. Daria said, since Russell already fought the guy, tracking him should be easy, but warned that he'd be ready for it. She asked if he was ready to take that risk. Russell put a hand on his chest and gave a speech about his duty as a guardian of the kingdom. Daria nodded and told him to head out tomorrow morning. She'd have the portal ready and reminded him to pack supplies. Russell was hyped to get permission. He was ready to take the first step to stop the tragedy waiting for Hilbert. In the carriage, he was clutching 2 high-grade potions, unable to believe he scored such valuable loot. Daria let him go, but she's probably stressing cause of his age. Russell looked out the carriage window, spotted a place, and yelled to stop. He hopped out for a sec. It was the Lyrium Museum. He walked to the spot where he time-traveled, staring at the item that caused all this. He'd been wondering why this miracle happened and finally figured it out. It was so he could get stronger and protect more people. Russell got a quest to protect the dragon heart stored in the royal city of Diamond. He got another quest called Draconification, using dragon power at will. He looked at the rewards and thought, not bad at all. The first mission meant doing something huge to get on the royal family's good side. Tough, but not impossible. The second mission made 0 sense, though. He was thinking about it when a notification popped up saying it would explain draconification. Suddenly, flame power burst out of him and his eyes changed. He'd felt this surge in magic during crises before. He saw his reflection in the glass. Back at the hotel, Russell realized that power had shown up during the trial of fire. If he could control that feeling, it'd be epic. He could boost his strength by mixing overheat with draconification. This attack was going to be straight up lethal, pushing him real close to the 6th circle. Only problem was Russell had no clue how to actually make it happen. I mean, that power only seemed to show up in total do-or-die moments. Plus, with the mission and all, he didn't exactly have time to train. And even if he did, normal training wasn't going to cut it. While Russell was deep in thought, Pepper got an idea and started tugging on his clothes, trying to get his attention. But our guy was so lost in his head he didn't even notice, which got the little dragon totally annoyed. Pepper spit out a blast of fire just to make sure Russell got the message. Russell was sitting there with his legs crossed when Pepper climbed right up onto his head. It felt like he was drifting into a trance, and boom, he was back in that familiar spirit realm where he first met Pepper. Time moved way differently in there compared to the outside world, making it the perfect spot to grind magic. But Russell was kinda bummed he didn't have a sparring partner. Suddenly, Russell heard a noise behind him. He whipped around and saw a massive red dragon staring him down. Russell figured the dragon had to be Pepper. The beast got close and nuzzled him with its snout, like it was begging for head pats. Russell thanked him for the help, but said sparring with a dragon was kinda tough. He didn't even finish his sentence before some weird beings showed up. Russell didn't sweat it though, because their leader was just some humanoid in armor. He just casually snapped his fingers. He got ready for whatever fight those guys were gonna bring. Meanwhile, a group of dudes was gathered in a tavern, and one of them asked the captain if they should go after the pagans who skipped town. The captain said they had to handle everything and ordered Jackson to tell the Tower of Flames that things had changed. Jackson, the bartender, said he'd do it, but told the group to watch their backs. The captain was super cocky and told Jackson not to worry. He said some deity raised by Daria Snow White was on the way to help out, but he said they couldn't let him have all the fun. The captain and 2 of his lackeys headed out. 3 days later, back at the tavern, Jackson sent another report begging for the Tower of Flames deity to hurry up, since the tower's scouts in Sudra had gone totally MIA. In the city, some guy scoffed, and his buddy saw why he was annoyed. Some innocent-looking kid walking around. Russell had finally made it to the neutral city, Sudra. Russell walked the shady streets of Sudra, while a bunch of thugs eyed him up. Without the royal city's portal, it should have taken him like a week to get there. But thanks to the mental training in the spirit realm where time stood still, it felt like he'd been traveling for a whole month. Russell spent all that time grinding and finally mastered draconification. He got a notification saying he unlocked the power of a dragon whenever he wanted, all on his own. It also said his dragon horns would start popping out depending on the level he reached. Plus, while using draconification, his understanding of flame attributes would shoot through the roof. But even though he could use the skill, Russell ran into a snag while sparring. There was a countdown for how long he could keep the power up, and the time limit was super short. like only 15 seconds. Another issue was the backlash draconification caused on his body, kind of like overheating. After using the skill, he'd be a total sitting duck. Sudra was pretty sunny, but despite the nice weather, the place was dangerous as hell. While Russell was walking the streets, some guy suddenly stepped to him. With a nasty look on his face, the guy asked if Russell was lost. He said he could show him the way if he wanted. Since Russell was actually looking for a guide, he just tossed his bag to the guy. A bit later, Russell got to a big tavern. The guy who carried his bag had his face all swollen and messed up, probably from eating a few of our guy S-punches. He said the place was called the Yellow Wyvern. The guy and his buddies bowed, wishing Russell a good trip. Russell gave a little smirk and waved them off. When he walked in, the bartender greeted him. After sitting at the bar, Russell ordered a 37-year-old Red Dragon cocktail mixed with another 12-year-old drink. Some guy sitting nearby called him crazy. He said he was picking a cocktail with over 70% alcohol, but Russell didn't actually want the drink for the buzz. It was actually a secret code from the Tower of Flames. The bartender looked at Russell and couldn't believe this kid was the tower's big shot deity. Jackson served the drink, and a soundproof barrier popped up around them so the other customers couldn't hear a thing. He introduced himself as a Red Tower mage, sent to the city undercover as the Yellow Wyvern's manager. Russell introduced himself too, saying he was from the Tower of Flames. Jackson asked him to move to another spot. Once there, he explained how 3 scouts from the Tower of Flames had gone missing. He said the last time anyone heard from them, they were heading toward the desert ruins. Russell asked if the group had walked into a trap, but Jackson said they weren't the type to rush in and get caught like that. Russell then asked if Jackson had a map of the desert ruins. He was planning a rescue mission. Jackson warned him that the place was super dangerous, right on the edge of the Empire, and told Russell to wait for backup. But a split second later, the pressure hit him. Russell let out a mana aura that made Jackson shake in his boots. The guy turned pale. He thought Russell had just reached the 4th circle, but this aura felt like 5th circle at least. Russell asked if it was cool for him to head out first. When the pressure lifted, Jackson coughed in relief and admitted he'd jumped the gun. Embarrassed, he scratched the back of his head and told Russell he'd show him the way to the ruins. Russell smiled, happy he got what he wanted. Somewhere else, in what looked like a temple, a man was kneeling down, reporting that he'd left the trail behind just like he was told. The 2 creeps in front of him grinned, talking smack about how they could already smell their chaser's blood. And man, the so-called paradise weather in Sudra could choke you out if you didn't drink enough water. Russell was feeling the heat big time, wondering if he should have leveled up his ice magic instead. Finally, he made it to the desert ruins and found this massive dome, like way bigger than he expected. He ran a lap around the place, spotting a bunch of ways in. Russell cursed those damn cultists. Honestly, he could be just blown the whole place sky high to smoke them out, but since they grabbed the scouts, that wasn't happening. He knew he had to go in, even though the place was probably booby-trapped to hell. Luckily, he had a plan. He lit his feet on fire literally and started spamming his blink skill, jumping all the way to the top of the dome. Talk about an unexpected entrance. He dove through the roof and used wind magic to slow his fall. Scanning the area, no traps in sight. In the middle of this huge hall, there was this sick mural of a dragon breathing fire next to some black-haired knight, but the part showing who they were fighting totally wrecked. Suddenly, this creepy laugh echoed out, followed by a voice. Heh, surprise, surprise. Can't believe the Academy kid is actually chasing me. Russell realized a whole crowd was flooding into the room. The voice kept yapping, saying since Russell came all this way, finding him would be a piece of cake. But when those figures got closer, not bad. Russell realized they weren't people at all. They were skeletons moving by magic. Then the voice dropped an ultimatum. As a thank you gift, I guarantee you're never leaving. Russell just scoffed, asking why the guy ran so far away if he loved hearing himself talk so much. Pissed off, the guy called him arrogant and ordered the skeletons to charge. Russell noticed these weren't just random bones. They were elite soldiers who died in battle ages ago. This fight was going to be way tougher than the last one, and that creep wanted this place to be Russell's grave. Our MC made his move, throwing up a wall of fire. The necromancer watching thought it was the same old spell from last time, but Russell was like, nope, guess again. He moved his hands, and magic formulas started popping up one after another. Draconification wasn't the only trick he'd have been practicing. He upgraded his firewall spell by adding a vector formula to it. Now that wall turned into a massive flaming wave. The flames shot up dozens of meters high and spread out, swallowing the skeletons instantly and turning them into ash. The necromancer's jaw hit the floor as he watched his army get wrecked. That's when Russell spotted him, hiding behind a crack in the wall. The guy couldn't figure out how he got busted, figuring Russell must have used some detection magic through the fire. He knew he had to bail, but it was too late. Russell was already on him. Surrounded by flames, Russell went in for the kill. The explosion blasted the guy into the middle of the room, making him cough up blood from the impact. Russell walked up and asked if he was ready to give up. To save them both the trouble, the guy stood up slowly and said, I can't. My soul doesn't even belong to me. And if that wasn't enough, I sold my family too. I gave up everything I had." After the guy's desperate scream, two figures jumped into the hall, same way Russell did. The couple attacked him using a demon clan skill called Nightmare Tail. Russell was totally caught off guard, barely having time to react. After the hit, a cloud of smoke filled the room. The woman stepped up to Russell, the stalker they just attacked. The dude with her looked at the heretic Russell was fighting earlier, saying that even for bait, he looked pathetic getting beat up by a kid. The woman laughed too, saying his rat-like face suited him perfectly. But then, the guy shocked them both by revealing who our MC actually was, claiming he was their target, the disciple of the Tower of Flames master. They were stunned, asking if this kid was really that damn Daria S student. By then, the dust had settled. Where Russell had been standing, a barrier appeared. As the barrier faded, Russell stepped out and said, "Filthy trash, like you better keep my master's name out of your mouths." Furious, Russell got a quest: fight the cultists. He had to capture at least one or beat all three. The masked guy praised Russell, admitting he was better than expected. The woman laughed like a psycho, saying that bastard Daria S disciple wouldn't go down easy. She threatened to turn Russell S body into a puppet and make it dance in front of the Tower of Flames. Then the masked guy pulled out some whips and told Xavier to block the exit. Suddenly, bones covered every door in the hall. The woman said things were finally getting fun. Russell realized they weren't summoning the dead from a distance anymore. They were ready for a full-on frontal assault. Unlike the other losers, these enemies were on a whole different level. The woman, annoyed nothing was happening, asked if Russell was going to attack first, or what? So he asked a question. He wanted to know what they did to the scouts who got there before him. The guy with the huge whips didn't get which escort Russell was talking about, while the woman got pissed, thinking he was just trying to stall for time. She lunged at him with her demon stinger claw skill. Russell dodged the attacks, wondering if those two seriously didn't know about the scouts. While dodging her strikes, he easily slipped past the whip attacks too. He tried to figure out if they were faking it, but he had a way to find out. Frustrated that Russell kept dodging, the woman asked if he was trying to run away. That's when our MC summoned flames in his hand, creating a flaming spear to block the demon claws. The bandage-faced heretic recognized the spear, saying it was the same one that pierced the giant skeleton. The woman was losing it, laughing like a total maniac, saying the battle was finally getting exciting. Then she threw her hands up and cast demon claws, fusing both hands into one gnarly demonic spear. Licking her lips, she dared Russell to see whose spear was tougher. Ignoring the masked guy's warning, she attacked first, talking trash about how embarrassing it was to be scared of a kid. She charged, and bam, their spears collided. But Russell S was way stronger, totally shattering hers. The hit didn't just break her weapon, it vaporized her whole arm. Once she realized her limb was gone, she started screaming like crazy. But the masked dude didn't hesitate. He silenced her for good with one fatal strike, splashing her blood all over Russell. Cold. Zero remorse. He just said he told her not to go solo. Then he walked toward the MC, step by step, spinning his whips and whipping up powerful air currents. "Disciple of the Tower of Flames, I'm your enemy, but I gotta admit, you're strong. So now, I'm gonna use everything I've got to rip you to shreds." Suddenly, a tornado started spinning up around the masked guy. He attacked Russell with this wicked spell called Nightmare Tail Tornado. Whips were flying from every side. He was bragging that no matter how good Russell was, he couldn't block attacks coming from every direction at once. But his confidence didn't last long. Flames engulfed his whips as Russell just popped up right inside the tornado like a boss. The protagonist used Blink to close the gap in a split second, forcing a straight-up fist fight. Channeling mana into his fist, Russell unleashed a devastating punch on the masked guy, mixing his overheat skill with raw physical power. That wrecked the opponent. Meanwhile, back in the big hall, the bandaged freak was wondering what the hell was going on. He saw Russell gripping the masked guy's head and just pounding his face in. Terrified, the bandaged dude grabbed his own head, shaking like a leaf. He cursed the duo for losing when they were supposed to help him. Then, he spotted something near the dead woman's body, a small red orb. He realized it was an artifact instantly. Meanwhile, the masked guy was coughing up blood, sick of being treated like a punching bag. He begged Russell to just kill him, but the protagonist was like, "Stop talking crap and answer my questions." With his hand wrapped in flames, Russell threatened the guy, demanding to know where the scouts were. The masked dude spat out more blood, asking why Russell was so obsessed with these scouts and who those losers even were. Russell started wondering if the guy was actually clueless. Seeing an opening, the masked dude tried to pull a fast one and conjure a knife. But before he could strike, a giant tentacle shot out of nowhere, grabbed him by the neck, and hoisted him into the air. Russell looked over and saw the bandaged heretic holding the artifact and chanting some creepy prayer. Tentacles started bursting out of the pile of skeletons. Russell realized straight away this was sacrificial magic. Choked by the tentacle, the masked guy wondered if this was the work of the Hell Giant's heart. He didn't have much time to think before he got dragged away. The heretic kept up his ritual, offering himself and everyone else as a sacrifice. The masked guy tried to fight it in desperation, but sharp bones impaled him, leaving him trapped and coughing up blood. Then Xavier finished the summoning, and then the abomination appeared, a massive, muscular beast radiating such evil mana that even Russell felt the pressure. Russell's mission updated: defeat all cultists and destroy the abomination. The monster looked at its own hands, trembling with pure rage. How dare you turn me into this, Russell Raymond? I swear I'm gonna chop you into little pieces right here. Blinded by fury, the abomination charged at Russell with demon claws. Russell recognized that move. It was the same magic the crazy lady used earlier. The abomination's heavy attacks were coming in hot. Russell was trying to think of a plan when a massive explosion rocked the place. The whole dome started collapsing. Buried in rubble, Russell quickly blasted a tower of flames to clear the rocks and keep himself safe. Spear in hand, he cursed the bastard for causing such a mess and started walking toward the debris. He figured the abomination had crushed itself under its own attack. But nope, a second later, the rubble started shaking. Russell couldn't believe his eyes. The abomination burst out of the rocks, holding whips and ready to keep hunting. The abomination chased Russell with the whips, screaming that it was going to chew him down until nothing but bones were left. While the monster was running its mouth, bam! A huge explosion hit it from behind. Russell's attack landed perfectly, creating a cloud of embers. But when the smoke cleared, the monster didn't have a scratch. It turned its gaze slowly back to the protagonist, finally locking onto him. The abomination bragged that Russell's attacks wouldn't work, and Russell knew it too. The thing's defense was unbelievable. Russell tried to think clearly while dodging chain attacks, but the abomination wasn't giving him any breathing room. It kept mocking him, saying thinking wouldn't save him. But Russell knew exactly what he was doing. He just needed to buy some time. Using Blink, he kept dodging and staying safe. The abomination laughed, making fun of him for running away. Ignoring the trash talk, Russell summoned Pepper. The little dragon appeared, totally wrapped in flames. Hearing Russell's call for help, Pepper growled happily. Now, with the dragon's help, Russell could finally strike back. He summoned his flames and blasted a massive wave of fire right at that abomination. But the freak just laughed as he snuffed out the flames, calling Russell a total idiot, asking if he seriously thought some lame magic skill like that could actually hurt him. But when he looked closer, he realized the main guy was gone. Right then, Russell gave the signal to Pepper, and the little dragon shot out a breath of fire, roasting the abomination. The monster tried desperately to smack Pepper, but the little dragon was way too fast to get hit. Russell's plan totally worked. He'd distracted the abomination, pulling its attention away from himself. Meanwhile, Russell was flying high, charging up his next attack. He started nosediving at top speed, flames wrapping around his spear, looking for some insane piercing power. Russell popped the overheat skill on his flaming spear. Pepper sensed his Master S attack coming. The abomination, still not seeing Russell, was screaming for him to show his face. And just like the abomination wanted, Russell attacked. The massive strike slammed right into the creature's head. Even while covered in flames from the impact, the abomination claimed the attack was useless. But Russell knew the real hit was just about to land. Lightning started gathering in the sky, and Russell, knowing what was coming, jumped away from the freak. Right after, he cast Call of Thunder, a skill that's even more devastating. Thunder Hammer of the Giants. A humongous lightning hammer crashed down on the abomination, smashing it into the ground. Electricity surged through its whole body as the hammer crushed its skull. The impact was so hard, it triggered a massive explosion. A bit later, the dust started to settle, and Russell wondered if the fight was finally over. Then he spotted the abomination's legs still standing there. But looking closer, he saw it was just the creature's empty skeleton stuck to the legs. Russell got the notification that the battle was done, and he'd be getting his reward. Totally wiped out, the protagonist collapsed on the ground, relieved. Pepper flew over to him, celebrating the win right by his side. While he was celebrating, something crazy happened. The skull, attached to the abomination's skeleton, rolled right to Russell's feet. Suddenly, the skull started talking. Raymond Daria raised an incredible kid in her final years. Who knew this kid would be a Raymond? Russell was totally shocked. When the skull asked if the son would be more interesting than the father, Russell grabbed that thing in a rage, demanding to know who it was. The skull grinned and said Russell would find out sooner or later. It mentioned his dad had the exact same fierce look in his last years. Then the skull crumbled to dust, leaving only an evil laugh behind. Night had just fallen, and rain started pouring down on Russell like tears from the sky. Furious, Russell screamed, demanding that damn skull reveal itself. He was crying in the rain while Pepper tried to comfort him, touching his hands. hands that were clawing at the hard desert ground. The protagonist stayed like that for a while, totally crushed by the weight of everything. Nearby, someone was watching Russell through a telescope. The guy confirmed the battle was over and ordered his men to send a report. The Imperial Army's 2nd Battalion was camped out in the 10th Desert. A bunch of tents were set up around an oasis. In one of them, the battalion commander, Viscount Montam, was reading the report carefully. The fight between the guy identified as the Mage of Endymion and a cultist ended with the mage winning. Judging by the magical power used, they estimated the mage was way above the 5th circle level. The Viscount slammed his hand on the table, pissed off. He summoned the intel officer, who answered the call fast, looking terrified. Montam, furious, crumpled up the report and asked how the hell a mage that strong got so close to his territory without being detected. The officer apologized, bowing his head, swearing there were no reports of any suspicious moves from high-ranking Endymion mages. Another guy in the meeting suggested the mage might be new, since there were rumors that the Tower of Flames recently took in a promising young kid. That same guy claimed if that was the case, a mage who just graduated from the academy probably didn't know much yet, and that there was nothing to worry about as long as he didn't get near the border. The Viscount stood up, absolutely fuming, yelling at his lackeys. A recent grad already estimated above the 5th circle? That means he could become one of Endymion's main weapons in the future. His subordinates hadn't realized how serious this was, making the Viscount sigh. Then he made a twisted, evil face, saying he had no choice but to call in a certain maniac. When the next day rolled around, the sun was blazing over the desert. Russell was still sitting on a sand dune, lost in thoughts about what happened. He knew that cultists seemed to know his dad. Shaking his head, he tried to focus on his mission finding the scouts, especially right now. Russell also realized he was being tailed, probably by spies sent by the Empire. Since they hadn't attacked yet, he figured they were just watching him. Suddenly, Russell spotted a figure in the desert. The sun was shining super bright behind this person. The protagonist got ready to attack, but he was caught off guard by the guy's speed. The guy sliced through the sand with his aura. Barely having time to dodge, Russell hit the ground, realizing he'd just been hit by an aura attack. Then he got a notification. He was facing a crazy strong enemy, like nothing he'd fought before. Russell knew he had to run from this opponent. Looking closer at the guy who showed up, Russell recognized him. Spandam, the dude with a sword resting on his shoulder. He laughed and said he definitely aimed for Russell's neck. That confirmed the report about the kid being a master above the 5th circle was true. Russell grit his teeth, staring at the man known as the Empire's superhuman, the disciple of the great swordmaster McCrae Hughes. Spandam, with a maniacal grin, declared it would be fun to chop Russell into pieces, even though he's the disciple of a grand swordmaster. Russell knew homicidal psycho was the only way to describe Spandam, but Spandam? He was totally shook that Russell actually knew his name. He whipped out this wicked aura on his sword, looking relieved. Our MC just stayed quiet, while Spandam flashed this sick, sadistic grin, telling Russell to just suck it up and accept the agony coming his way. That psycho Spandam and his crimson aura were stuck in Russell's head like a nightmare. With just a casual bump, he'd completely wrecked a whole squad of mercenaries. Russell almost ended up as roadkill too. But back then, Daria Snow White someone stepped in to save him from Spandam. That someone was Alan Page, the only dude strong enough to check that killer. Bottom line, Spandam was a monster on a whole new level. Spandam decided to kick things off. His sword moved like a whip as he unleashed his skill, Blood Flight. Russell threw up a 5-layer shield instantly, but Spandam's aura strike was so OP it smashed through every single layer. The MC barely dodged it. The attack flew right over him and slammed into the ground with insane force. Russell couldn't believe the sheer power, even after breaking his shield. He wondered how the hell Alan Page ever managed to fight someone this destructive. Spandam gave him props for the strategy of stacking shields, but then trashed the low density of his magic power. Then he fired off a barrage of aura attacks. Russell, taking the hint about density, used his flame spear magic to slice right through them. Shocked that this young mage blocked his hits, Spandam figured Russell was hiding some serious power. Seeing the swordsman react, Russell hurled the spear straight at him. Spandam was actually impressed that the thing kept its shape even after being thrown, so he used Flying Blood Wave, getting super hyped. He said that when fighting mages, this kind of stuff made things way more interesting. Russell charged in with his flame spear, trying to slice Spandam, but the guy vanished before the hit connected. Next second, Spandam popped up right behind Russell. Just like a rat, you know how to use blink too, huh? He mocked. Russell was stunned by Spandam's speed as he went for a backstab. That maniac swordsman licked his lips, saying he hasn't had this much fun in ages. Russell backed off, landing further away. Spandam smirked and said he'd wait for Russell to make the first move. The MC, who'd already tried clashing with him, wondered if Spandam was buffing his physical stats by wrapping his body in aura. A mage's body couldn't even compare to that kind of toughness. Laughing, Spandam couldn't believe the cut on Russell had already stopped bleeding. Are all you guys from the Tower of Flames this stubborn, or is that a requirement to get in? He teased. Russell got curious, wondering what the hell Spandam meant by that. The swordsman laughed like a psycho, revealing that the people he met a few days ago didn't give up easy either. They fought to the bitter end. Hearing that, Russell asked straight up if Spandam was the one who took out the scouts. Spandam looked totally bored, like he felt zero guilt. Russell's mission was just to find the scouts and bail, so he originally planned to avoid a long fight. But plans changed. Russell's aura exploded. His mana was overflowing with pure rage. For him, this wasn't the time to worry about the future. Spandam grinned, seeing the switch up, asking if Russell had been hiding his true power this whole time. Spandam unleashed his own aura too, curious if Russell would keep playing it safe after feeling some real pain. Russell's magic ring hadn't recharged yet, leaving him with only one option. Spandam channeled aura into his blade and used a new move, Torrent Blood. Attacks looking like rushing rivers of blood shot straight at Russell. But right then, Russell triggered his ultimate skill, Dragonification. Russell charged, smashing through Spandam's attack and heading straight for him. Inside a massive forming fireball, Russell locked his dragon eyes on the swordsman. He had less than 15 seconds. Fast as lightning, Russell summoned his signature magic, the Flame Spear. Spandam gritted his teeth at the insane power. Russell's attack slammed into him, unleashing a wave of fire. But Spandam dodged at the last split second, appearing right behind Russell. Not getting what trick the MC just pulled, Spandam attacked fast, forcing Russell to defend. Smiling, Spandam said he knew that sudden power boost had to be temporary. Only 9 seconds left. Russell kept the pressure on with his flame spear, blasting a torrent of fire that forced Spandam back. Now, only 6 seconds. Spandam mocked him, saying it didn't matter how strong Russell was, if it wasn't enough, it was useless. Deciding to end it, Spandam charged with a cyclone skill. He jumped, attacking Russell from above, surrounded by a cyclone of aura. Russell met him with his spear, and their weapons crashed together violently, pushing each other back. Russell's spear got forced into the ground, creating a literal sea of flames. As the ash started to clear, the Dragonification timer was pretty much done. Russell fell to his knees, totally drained from the overload. Spandam didn't attack though, figuring Russell's power trip was over, but there was still 1 second left. Quickly! Russell slammed his hands on the ground, casting a 6th circle spell. The whole floor started cracking, eaten up by flames coming from inside. In a flash, the ground turned into scorching lava, like a volcano erupting. This was the powerhouse spell, Meltdown. It was magic Russell knew from his past life. But since it needed 6th circle mastery, he couldn't use it fully yet. Starting with just small embers, this magic spell blanketed the whole zone in boiling magma. Pepper grabbed Russell by his shirt and flew over the lava, struggling to haul the guy's weight. The MC thanked the Lil Dragon for the effort, knowing it was a pain to carry him. Once the magma cooled down, Russell touched down on the ground. Checking the surroundings, he noticed someone was still kicking. Spandam was coughing hard. Russell walked up to the swordsman, summoning a fire arrow. When he asked for any last words, Spandam gave the MC this twisted, ironic smirk. Funny, right? They throw you into a war in the name of protecting the continent, but they don't teach you how to get out. You gotta defeat enemy after enemy, turning the Guardian's path into a highway of blood. With a cynical smile, Spandam thanked Russell, totally accepting his fate. Then he dropped to his knees. Russell got a notification saying he completed the mission with results way better than expected, scoring more mana stones than he thought he would. Meanwhile, some dude on a yellow wyvern was chatting up the bartender again. Inside a soundproof shield, he claimed Spandam, the Empire's knight, was moving secretly in the desert and the missing escorts might be on him. Hearing that, the bartender who has a secret agent was shook. He knew if that was true, even the Flame Tower's divinity was in trouble. No matter how skilled he was, he knew Russell was the one facing Spandam now. While the bartender was chewing on that info, the bar door swung open. Someone walked in and slammed a sword on the table. The guy talking to the bartender freaked out, asking, "Wait, isn't that Spandam's sword?" The person who dropped it ordered a glass of water instead of the hardcore Red Dragon booze. The bartender recognized Russell, grinned, and said he'd give him whatever he wanted. That night, the bartender whipped up a new report on the Flame Tower scouts and the warrior involved in the mission. In the file, he wrote that Russell Raymond wiped out both the pagans and Spandam. That news spread like wildfire through Camelot, the capital of Endymion. Everyone was talking about Russell Raymond, the last heir of the fallen Raymond house. Rumor had it he beat an abomination, the magical beast of the pagans, and that he also clapped Spandam, the Empire's knight, plus became the newest member of the Flame Tower. The story was hard to swallow, though, and people had mixed feelings. Russell came back through the gate a bit later. He met his master, Professor Hilbert, and Vermilion there. When he got back, Darius Snow White thanked him for being alive while patting his head. Some people were super relieved he returned. Even though the Spear Tower Master had to admit he lost the bet with Daria, Alan Page was just like, Russell is even more insane than I imagined. While some looked at him with mad respect for what he did to Spandam, others got competitive. But there were those nursing some serious hate and rage. Like McCrae Hughes, the Empire's swordmaster. While everyone was feeling all kinds of emotions, there was one vibe they all shared. They all had a strong impression of Russell Raymond now. In a snow-covered forest, McCrae swore that just like an eye for an eye, a disciple would be avenged by another disciple. He promised himself he'd pay Daria Snow White back for everything she caused, no matter the cost. Russell was in a carriage with Daria. She asked if he was trying to say the pagans were involved in what happened to his dad. Russell, decked out in fancy clothes, confirmed she was right. She mentioned a ton of files got lost during the war, making it tough to find the truth or identify the real culprit. Russell knew the deal. Then Daria held his hands, saying she was sure of one thing. If he kept chasing the pagans, they'd eventually find the truth. She guaranteed that she, along with the Flame Tower, would always have his back. Russell thanked her for the help. Then the driver shouted they had arrived at the destination. Daria wished Russell could leave his doubts and anxiety behind and just expand his horizons at this place. The spot they arrived at was massive and guarded by sentinels. The Magic Tower Council, a magical society gathering the masters of over 20 magic towers in Endymion. Thanks to wrecking Spandam months ago, Russell got into the place as Daria Snow White's aide, despite being a total newbie in the tower. In the fancy ballroom full of gold decorations, a bunch of people were chatting excitedly, not long after Russell and Daria walked in. Several people came up, wanting to meet the famous Flame Tower divinity. Russell thanked them for the praise with a smile, while Daria mixed with the crowd too. During the chats, the Yellow Tower Master showed up. Daria introduced Russell to him. Niccolo Machiavelli, the guy organizing the Magic Tower Council. Russell bowed to be polite. Niccolo Machiavelli put a hand on the kid's shoulder, saying he didn't need to be so formal since he already defeated a scumbag's disciple. Curious, Russell asked who Niccolo was talking about. He revealed he meant McCrae Hughes, the Empire's swordmaster. Daria explained Spandam was McCrae's student. Niccolo looked kinda sinister and satisfied saying that, while Russell just watched him in silence. Suddenly, someone told Niccolo Machiavelli not to touch old wounds and to hurry up with the presentation. It was Hemingway, the Spear Tower Master, who greeted Daria and Niccolo as he walked up. The second he got near Daria, the rivalry sparked. Daria teased, asking if Hemingway was jealous of the praise her student was getting. Hemingway shot back, asking if she thought he was as petty as her. Niccolo Machiavelli scratched his head, embarrassed by the two vets fighting. Watching the scene, Russell couldn't help but smile. Hemingway Melville took the chance to ask if Daria forgot the bet about the God-era relics. She said nope, and Hemingway tried to brag by mentioning Alan, but he got cut off by his apprentice dragging him away while the master grumbled, claiming he still had stuff to say. Russell just laughed it off. Right after Niccolo kicked off the Magic Tower Council meeting, he announced the big news was about these ruins getting dug up at Mount Calvin from, the end of the Mythic era. There is still a ton of stuff to find there, all hyped up. Niccolo was like, basically, there's a huge chance actual relics are hidden there. Daria told Russell they might dig up some insane artifact that could totally change history. From the podium, Niccolo said they needed backup to keep the place safe, so he called on Alan Page from the Spear Tower and Russell Raymond from the Flame Tower, asking them to team up. Some people in the crowd were saying it was a solid idea since both of them had already proved they got skills. Daria was super proud hearing her student get praised. But then, out of nowhere, some voice objected. Daria turned around and saw the guy running his mouth was Blaine Trilogy, the master of the Red Tower, rolling with Jerome, another mage from his crew. Niccolo was confused and asked Blaine to explain what his deal was. Blaine Trilogy clapped back, saying he was objecting because of Alex Raymond, bringing up his defeat. Everyone around started whispering, asking what the heck Russell had to do with his dad's loss in a war that happened ages ago. Blaine kept pushing it, asking, what if that defeat cost the lives of the kingdom's best soldiers? What if they died because he bailed on the battle without permission? The crowd went dead silent, but Daria spoke up, saying that was just speculation since nobody had enough info about that time period. Blaine Trilogy was like, nah, you're wrong, claiming he was actually there. The Red Tower Master shocked everyone by saying he saw with his own eyes Alex Raymond running away from the battlefield. Russell was totally stunned, wondering if his dad really did run away. Russell knew his dad dying in the war wasn't a secret, so what this guy was saying made zero sense. Blaine kept going, claiming the Raymond family owed a debt to the kingdom that had to be paid. He asked how messed up it would be for the kingdom's youth if they trusted such a big mission to the Raymond family. Basically, if Russell was in charge of the guard, the Red Tower wouldn't give any support to the expedition at all. Niccolo Machiavelli watched Blaine rile everyone up with just a few words. Typical Red Tower move, or actually, just typical Blaine behavior. He was trusted by the king's uncle and the most powerful guy in the land, Archduke Bismarck. That was Blaine Trilogy. Going against him meant messing with the Archduke's faction. The only people there brave enough to walk on eggshells were Hemingway and Daria. Daria tried to stop Russell from getting involved, but the protagonist stepped up, asking if he could ask Blaine a question. Then he asked if Blaine Trilogy would take responsibility for what he just said. Blaine didn't get what Russell meant, so the protagonist clarified he was talking about responsibility for dissing the Raymond house. Daria tried to hold Russell back, saying it wasn't the right time. Blaine Trilogy scoffed, saying the honor of a bankrupt house didn't mean squat. Then he told Russell he should be grateful Daria Snow White was his teacher, or else he'd cut out the kid's tongue to make an example of him for all the other reckless and arrogant mages. Just then, someone walked into the hall, saying the master of the Red Tower looked more high and mighty every time she saw him, so much that someone might mistake him for the king. People were shocked to see the woman walking in wearing an elegant outfit with a cape on her back. It was Her Highness Hecate Hatmos, the princess. The second the princess walked in, everyone started bowing, even Blaine Trilogy, who was wondering why the princess was even there. The princess said that listening from outside the Red Tower Master seemed to have a point, and Blaine thanked her. But a split second later, Hecate Hatmos turned to Russell, saying that those who had a debt should pay it. Daria tried to step in, but the princess kept talking, saying they had to give the person a chance to pay back what they owed. Then she gave an order for this excavation. The Spear Tower and the Flame Tower will be on guard duty, and so will the Red Tower. Everyone there from the three towers was totally shocked by this, while the princess just smiled. Blaine Trilogy tried to back out, saying this wasn't something to be taken so lightly. Princess Hecate turned to the Yellow Tower Master, who answered her call right away. The princess asked who the biggest sponsor of the excavation was. Niccolo, the master of the Yellow Tower, bowed his bald head to answer the princess, confirming that she was the biggest sponsor. The princess then declared that was how things were going to go down. After that, she turned her back and left the hall, leaving Blaine staring at her with a look that hid a lot of meaning. The master of the Yellow Tower quickly moved on to the next item on the agenda, the excavation schedule. While watching the princess leave, Russell got all excited. Blaine Trilogy, who was heading out, was thinking in his carriage that this was his chance to cut the Raymond family off at the roots. He couldn't believe the princess had butted in. Suddenly, the mage Geron jumped on top of the carriage with his sword. The carriage stopped, and Blaine Trilogy stepped down, saying he could see the person who stopped the carriage had zero manners. That person was Daria Snow White. Geron approached the mage, putting his sword to her neck. She laughed, asking if he thought that was enough, her eyes literally burning with fire. Blaine then walked up, ordering Geron to lower his sword to avoid any drama. The guy bowed to his master and backed off. Blaine said that considering their history, Daria obviously didn't come looking for him to apologize, and asked what she actually wanted. She then asked about Alex Raymond, and if he had also witnessed the man's death. Blaine Trilogy claimed he hadn't exactly seen him die, and Daria replied that was a shame. She was trying to get to the bottom of this, thinking about asking him only if it was actually true. Blaine told Daria he couldn't believe she was going this far, asking if she even knew Alex Raymond. Daria, getting super furious, said it was business involving her student, so it was her business too. She was trying to help Russell fix the situation no matter what it took. Blaine told Geron to drag the carriage back home because he had some stuff to check out. Meanwhile, somewhere else, there's this creepy skull with a symbol on its forehead sitting on a table. It was dead silent, and suddenly, boom, two flames lit up in the skull's eyes. Daria was totally chewing out our main guy, asking why he's spacing out when he's leaving for the mission tomorrow. She's just floating there with her magic, summoning a bunch of fire golems to beat on Russell. She asked if the Red Tower Master's words got under his skin. Russell was barely standing up, leaning on his flaming spear, and was like, "Nah, you're wrong." Daria watched him, knowing exactly what he was dealing with. The people who used to treat him like a god were suddenly trash-talking his dad, calling him a coward. With everyone staring and pointing fingers, there's no way that wouldn't mess with his head. Daria floated down and got close to him. She said, "Kid, the truth's gonna come out eventually. For now, just focus on your own path." Hearing that fired him up again, so he asked her to guide him one more time. Daria was super stoked to see Russell reacting like that, knowing his road wasn't gonna be easy, but he had to walk it. Kids gotta step out of their parents' shadows eventually, no matter how huge those shadows are. While Russell was training with Daria, night fell, and back in the big city where the academy is, this chick with purple hair was sneaking around in the crowd. 3 days later, Russell popped out of a teleport portal at Mount Calvin, and it was freezing cold. He stepped out, looked around, and all he could see was white, just snow and these massive ice spikes everywhere. He shivered for a sec, then snapped his fingers and used his fire mana to warm up, shaking off the chill. The people around him carrying supplies felt the air get hot all of a sudden, and everyone started relaxing. That purple-haired girl was there too. Suddenly, some guy walked up and asked if he was Sir Russell from the Flame Tower. The guy said they'd been waiting for him, and showed him where to go. While Russell followed him, he saw a bunch of symbols on these flags, representing all the earth magic experts gathered at Mount Calvin. The guide asked Russell if he thought it was awesome, pointing at a wall made entirely of magic crystals. Russell walked up, touched it, and saw his own reflection, just like a mirror. The guy said that's exactly why they call these ruins the Temple of Mirrors. Cause of all the crystals reflecting everything inside that snowy mountain. As they kept walking, a dude greeted Russell saying he was Spiegelman from the Yellow Tower, the guy in charge of the expedition. Russell said hi back and introduced himself. Russell knew this guy's story. He went from being a random villager to an elder of the Yellow Tower of the Royal Path. He was also an archaeologist and adventurer who dug up more ruins than anyone else in the kingdom. Russell really wanted to ask him some questions. Right then, Alan showed up when he saw Russell had arrived. Seeing Alan was already there, Russell shook his hand. They chatted for a bit, and Russell told Alan he was so hard-working it felt like cheating. Alan laughed and said he just wanted to protect the relic from the Age of Gods. Then, Alan said they just had to wait for the Red Tower Guardian so they could figure out the shifts and missions together. Spiegelman watched them talk and thought it was pretty sweet having the kingdom's top dogs guarding the dig site. But he wondered what kind of trouble could happen in the ruins to need all these people. He was thinking maybe it was overkill. While Spiegelman was lost in thought, a massive explosion went off from one of the gates. A ton of dust and energy blew out, hiding whatever was inside. Suddenly, a crystal golem burst out of the dust. Spiegelman freaked out, while Alan and Russell yelled at everyone to run for cover. The golem went berserk, shooting sharp crystals everywhere, hitting the slowpokes and even smashing through the shields the earth mages put up. Seeing the shields failed, Spiegelman used his magic and slammed his hands on the ground. The earth cracked, and stone spikes shot up, creating a wall that blocked the crystal golem's attack. Then Spiegelman told everyone to do the exact same thing. Meanwhile, the purple-haired girl was helping a guy who got hit by a crystal stand up. But she didn't realize there was another golem right behind her. When she finally noticed the danger, the golem fired a bunch of crystals at her and the wounded guy. She got ready to use magic to defend herself. But before she could do anything, Russell rushed in and used his flaming spear to blast a wave of fire at the crystals, shattering them. Then he asked if she was okay and noticed her hair color, realizing she was the princess he met before. The princess didn't think she'd get busted on the very first day, but Russell didn't have time to grill her, because the crystal golem was charging in with a roar. But Russell wasn't fighting alone. Alan Page used magic to create a glacial bow and fired an ice arrow straight at the golem. The arrow hit hard, freezing part of the golem's shoulder. Alan tried to blow up the creature's whole torso, but the thing was too tough for that. The golem screamed in rage, but then a third person showed up to handle it. Red mana flashed across the snowy field, and he smacked the golem with a powerful blood flame sword strike. The guy stepped back after the hit, saying he didn't think he was that late. He introduced himself as Geron from the Red Tower. 3 days earlier, the Red Tower Master was in some secluded spot with Geron, telling someone that Daria was looking into Alex Raymond's death and asking if they knew anything about it. The one who answered was, actually, this skull with a pentagram on his head claimed he saw zero reason for the attack on Alex other than the Red Tower Master himself ordering it. Then the skull asked if he was scared of getting busted. Blaine Trilogy stood up, clenching his fist hard, saying he was totally disappointed. Because if the skull had actually taken out Russell Raymond properly during the tower screening, Daria wouldn't even have a chance to be suspicious. The skull claimed it happened because he got trash intel, thinking Russell was just a kid. Blaine got ticked off, asking if the skull was seriously blaming him. But right in that moment of rage, someone else walked into the hall, asking if they called him over just to watch them fight. The guy with the scar on his eye was Bismarck. Blaine Trilogy bowed to the Archduke, who was already sitting down. The Archduke mentioned that Blaine's niece had totally messed with their plans. Blaine Trilogy confirmed it, saying the original plan was to keep the guard count as low as possible. Then the Archduke asked how Blaine was going to get the ruins. Blaine Trilogy introduced Geron to the Archduke, saying he'd join the guards. The plan was simple. As soon as he cracked a breach in the Yellow Tower's protective barrier, the cultist goons would ambush the expedition team. Bismarck thought for a sec and said that for the plan to work, they'd need to take down the masters protecting the current king. To cut off support for those masters, Daria and Hemingway, they'd need whatever's inside the ruins. Bismarck grabbed a small box leaking green mana, just like the cultists use. He asked if Blaine didn't think they needed extra insurance for the plan. Meanwhile, at the ruins, the princess dragged the protagonist behind a tent against his will. She told him to shut up, saying her being there was a huge secret, and it better stay a secret in the future. The princess told Russell to just ignore her and go his own way, even if it was hard to understand. The protagonist said the princess must really like the ruins, and if it were him, he'd be super disappointed not to see the mythological era ruins for himself. Russell promised the princess she wouldn't have to worry about a thing. The princess said the king and ministers were losing their minds trying to keep her still, while Russell apparently didn't care about her at all. Then the protagonist revealed that, even for a split second, he saw the princess's aura. To his surprise, he said she must have some monstrous power that not even knights could give her. That's why he didn't need to worry. But getting called a monster ticked her off, so she gave Russell a sneaky flick on the forehead. She went her own way, telling Russell they should just do their best in their own spots. With her back to Russell, the princess smiled, thinking the protagonist was actually a decent guy, even if he was still a total kid. Then the protagonist realized he totally could have taken advantage of the princess, asking for a dragon heart in exchange for keeping his mouth shut. Somewhere else, Spiegelman and the other mages were spamming their magic. The protagonist walked up to Alan Page, apologizing for being late. He realized the magic spells weren't working at all. Alan explained it was cause of a spatial disturbance, one of the strongest protective barriers out there. The mages kept trying to use their magic like drills to pierce the barrier, but they kept getting thrown back. Spiegelman got annoyed because they finally found the ruin-S gate, and of course, a spatial disturbance showed up right then. Jeroen, watching everything like a spy, thought it was a good idea to send a report to the Archduke about what was happening. The sun was already setting when Spiegelman was surprised to hear there was a way to crack the barrier. Alan, who said it, claimed the spear tower had a relic from the era of the gods that could penetrate the barrier and let them through. Spiegelman thought it was a great idea, but doubted the tower would just hand over something so precious. So Alan said he'd go to the spear tower personally to ask for permission. The archaeologist got super hyped, saying if Alan fixed this problem, he'd pay back the favor as a rep of the Yellow Tower. Alan smiled, promising he'd be back ASAP. Then he said bye to Russell and Jeroen. Heading to the teleport portal, he said he'd owe the two of them for protecting the place while he was gone. Jeroen thought this was perfect, cause with Alan Page gone, there was only one battle mage left. Russell, clueless about Jeroen's plans, said he wanted to talk about night watch shifts, but Jeroen just cut him off, saying he'd take the first watch. Russell, standing next to Alan who hadn't left yet, caught the creepy smile Jeroen gave before walking away. Near the barrier, two mages were warming up by a fire. Suddenly, they noticed a masked group coming closer. They jumped up and told the group to freeze, shouting that the place was under Yellow Tower jurisdiction. Those were the last words of the mage duo before they got attacked from behind. Jeroen was the one who took out the two mages guarding the barrier. He put his hand on the barrier, ripping open a breach. Then he told the cultist group that plans had changed. A spatial disturbance popped up where the ruins were guarded, and Alan Page left to grab the artifact that would break the gate's shield. The cultist group was led by a masked guy who opened his arms wide to really smell the bodies Jeroen had burned. Meanwhile, Jeroen said all they had to do was blackmail Alan by taking Spiegelman hostage. The cultist leader asked about the guy they called the Divinity of the Flame Tower. Jeroen ordered the group to get rid of Russell, saying he wouldn't tolerate screw-ups like last time. One of the cultists in big armor dissed Jeroen, saying he talked way too much for someone who's just a spectator. Things got super tense between them. The cultist leader stepped in, saying they were on the same side. Then he added that, obviously they weren't. They were talking trash about the illegitimate son of the High and Mighty Blaine trilogy, making Jeroen grind his teeth. The mage got totally furious at the taunt, exploding his mana to attack the cultist. But before Jeroen's attack could land, the cult leader used some kind of space magic to pop open two portals, making Jeroen's strike miss and slice right past his own neck. Jeroen asked what the hell the man just said, and the guy answered he was just joking, telling Jeroen to open up his heart a little. Not long after, the cultist crew started casting circle magic, drawing a pentagram right on the snowy ground. Suddenly, a bunch of monsters started rising from the circle. As the monsters showed up, the cult leader claimed there was no way his plans could go wrong. But if something did go off script, Jeroen had to remember to use the artifact the Archduke gave him. Before heading to the ruins, Blaine Trilogy told Jeroen to remember something. After this mission wraps up, you are going to live like a ghost until the day the Archduke takes the throne. For that to happen, not a single survivor can return from the expedition. Jeroen asked if he should use the object the Archduke gave him if things went south. Blaine just smiled, grabbing Jeroen's shoulder. You wanted my recognition, right? I'll simply believe you won to fail, no matter the cost. Jeroen watched the attacks kick off on the ruins and the diggers. He accepted his fate to become a ghost, just like Blaine Trilogy wanted. He'd be a ghost spreading fear and despair. Meanwhile, before the attacks had even started, Russell had asked Spiegelman about a dragon with multiple horns. The archaeologist asked why Russell was suddenly interested in that stuff. The protagonist revealed he saw a mural on a mission that caught his eye, because it was unusual. Spiegelman felt bad he couldn't give a precise answer. But he remembered an entity he knew about. The protagonist got interested when Spiegelman revealed it might be the Divine Dragon King. Russell had never heard of anything like that before. Spiegelman thought for a bit, saying that since historical docs are missing, they don't know much about its conquests. But rumor had it that this dragon resurrected those worthy of facing it. Suddenly, Pepper showed up, startling the protagonist. Spiegelman was shocked to realize Russell could summon spirits too. Pepper totally ignored the archaeologist and headed for the tent exit, growling. The protagonist wondered what Pepper was doing, but the next second, a huge monster with yellow bubbles all over its body busted into the tent. The monster puffed up the yellow bubbles on its face like it was holding something in its mouth, and then it spat out a jet of fire. Cabins were on fire everywhere, and people were screaming they were being ambushed. The mages running out of their tents ran straight into a huge knight holding a mace. They teamed up to attack the cultist. Quickly, a bunch of sharp rocks were launched at the knight. He defended easily, destroying the attacks and calling their skills pathetic. The mages were shook seeing their enemy was totally fine, even after the hit. Next second, the cultist swung his mace, charged with dark energy. The mace hit the ground, causing a shockwave that forced the mages back. Somewhere else, other mages were using earth magic to attack the cult leader, who was just walking calmly through the chaos. To defend himself, the cult leader used the same magic he used on Jerome, creating a portal that sucked up the attacks. He made another portal behind the mages, teleporting the attacks there and firing them back. Since they were off guard, they got hit. The cult leader walked through the flames wondering where old Spiegelman was. In one spot, amidst the fire, there was a barrier. The protagonist, who made the barrier, asked Spiegelman if he was okay. The archaeologist was incredibly pissed off. He asked who the crazy people were that dared to attack the Endymion excavation site. Looking at the mess, the protagonist noticed the undead. People using death as a weapon could only be the cultists. Despite Spiegelman's surprise, the protagonist apologized to the old man. He said he needed to protect someone else, telling the archaeologist they'd meet in front of the ruins. Spiegelman wondered who could be more important than him. Elsewhere, in the middle of the chaos, the princess was fighting the undead all by herself. Since she didn't have a weapon, she was using a small pickaxe to slash the monsters. She wondered where these things came from. After beating some monsters, the princess called out to all the living mages, saying it was safe where she was. The mages ran in a hurry to the princess, but suddenly something surprised them. The big knight with the mace had appeared. The princess didn't give him a chance to attack first, charging in and trying to knock him out with one hit. She quickly struck the big knight with the pickaxe, hitting his neck, but when she looked, the knight was completely unharmed after her attack. The cultist was impressed by the princess's strike, asking who she was. The princess ground her teeth, annoyed she didn't have a sword. She realized the mages were shaking with fear, and that she couldn't lose there. She was determined to win, because she was Hecate Hatmos, princess of the kingdom of Endymion, and she had the grit to protect her people. The cultist knight, seeing the princess didn't answer his question, said it didn't matter who she was, but things were getting more interesting. He said he'd make the situation more enjoyable and raised his mace to attack, but before any attack could hit Hecate Hatmos, a flame spear flew right past her, and the spear wielder attacked the big knight, knocking him far away. The protagonist then asked if the princess was okay. At that moment, the knight started to get up, recognizing the famous flame spear. He said the kid who attacked him must be the saint of the Tower of Flames. The protagonist stared down the armored giant while gathering the power of flames. He said he'd take care of the knight. Then, he told the princess to get everyone to the ruins entrance, because he planned to regroup with Spiegelman there. So the princess is like, "You sure you can handle this guy solo?" And Russell just shoots her a look. He reminds her she promised him a shot to pay off his debt. She smiles at that and heads out, taking the other mages with her. The knight adjusts his helmet and tells Russell, "If you are fighting in a team, this is going to be even more fun." Russell grins and says, "I'm already tag-teaming this." The knight's clueless until Pepper suddenly shows up, blasting him with a massive wave of fire. Russell doesn't waste a second. He starts casting, mixing overheat with his flame spear and adding an explosive kick to it. He calls this move the explosive flame spear, but the knight's like, "Your cheap tricks won't work on me anymore." He charges at Russell, and Russell charges right back with his spear. Next second, that huge mace goes up, the spear is ready to meet it, and bam, the weapons clash. A massive wave of fire totally swallows up the armored knight. Somewhere else, the mages are scrambling for cover. Suddenly, they run into Jerome. One mage walks up, asking if he's hurt and where he's been, because the enemies are attacking. The three mages can't even react before Jerome slashes them down using magic on his blade. Fire burns up the mages right in front of him. Then Jerome heads to high ground so he can get a view of the ruins. He scans for Spiegelman and spots the archaeologist trying to reorganize the group. Suddenly, Jerome notices someone else among the mages. Princess Hecate Hatmos. But while he's watching her, a huge explosion of flames startles him. He turns and sees it's that big mace-wielding warrior. The guy blocked Russell's attack by crossing his arms in front of his body. He's fine, but part of his armor shattered, showing his face. Russell mocks him. Finally showing your ugly mug, huh? What's with that sour look? The knight grinds his teeth, totally pissed. Don't you dare underestimate me, you arrogant brat. He starts pumping out aura, which surprises Russell. But the knight is using something way beyond normal aura. He's furious he has to use the heart, a transplanted knight's heart, just to fight Russell. The mana from his 2 hearts starts juicing up his body like crazy. He grabs his mace again, trying to smash Russell to bits. Russell dodges fast, but the knight keeps chasing him down. As the attacks keep coming, Russell smiles. This guy is even faster than Spandam. Then, Russell suddenly stops. He stops running away, gathers his energy, and charges straight back at the knight, slamming him right in the gut. Russell plans to end this fight now, but suddenly a massive wave of water blasts out of a portal, forcing him back. Russell's like, what the hell just happened? The knight gets up, and there's a masked dude standing next to him, bragging about how useful deep sea pressure is. Russell grips his spear again, determined not to miss this time. 5 points of light start spinning around the tip of his spear. He's not going to miss with the flame spear cyclone. He hurls the spear at the 2 guys, moving way too fast for them to dodge. The flame cyclone closes in, but the cultist leader says he has an interesting idea. He opens a portal aimed right at Spiegelman's group. Russell realizes what's happening too late. A huge portal opens in the sky. Spiegelman and the mages look up, watching the massive flame cyclone shoot through the portal. Spiegelman, the princess, and Russell can't believe their eyes. The giant fire cyclone crashes down on the archaeologist's group without warning. Russell sprints toward where his spear landed. Through the smoke, he searches for the princess and Spiegelman. Suddenly a hand goes up. It's the archaeologist lying in the corner, totally beat up. Russell rushes over, asking if he's okay, but Spiegelman just asks, how are the others? Looking around, they see the disaster. Russell starts apologizing for what he did, but then they spot flames out of the corner of their eyes. Jaren shows up, holding the princess in his arms. Russell yells out to her, totally freaked out. Spiegelman is shocked to see Princess Hecate. Relieved she is safe, Russell walks up to thank Jerome for saving her. But he doesn't see it coming when the fire tower mage stabs him right in the gut. Russell coughs up blood from the wound, while Spiegelman screams his name in panic. Pepper suddenly attacks Jerome, but a portal pops up between them, sending Pepper flying through it to nowhere. Right then, another portal opens, and the cultist leader steps out with the rest of his crew. Russell feels his strength fading away. Jerome reminds the cultist leader, I told you to take Spiegelman hostage. The leader suggests Jerome could just play the hostage. Spiegelman is furious, realizing the guy betrayed them. He tries to use earth magic to attack, but before he can do anything, a mace smashes him down. He hits the ground with a massive wound on his back. The cultist leader sees Jerome holding a woman and asks who she is. Jerome says, it's Princess Hecate, saying if they have her, they can control the whole kingdom of Endymion. He shoots a look of pure disgust at the cultist leader, saying his stupid moves almost ruined everything. The leader brushes it off, saying, hey, it all worked out in the end? Russell interrupts, I'm not letting that happen. He forces himself up, telling them, you guys aren't going any further. The knight with the mace steps up, planning to finish Russell off. That's when Russell starts activating his Ring S ability. Just as the knight raised his mace to get payback for that last hit, this creepy fog started rolling in. It totally freaked out the cultist leader. The mace guy swung, but right at that split second, Russell popped his draconification. Then boom, massive explosion. The cultist boss had no clue what was going on. He's like, is this fog just here to blind us or what? Suddenly his goons started getting dropped left and right. The leader started panic summoning portals all around himself. He couldn't see a thing, but he felt this insane mana spike that defied all logic. He instantly whipped up like 10 portals just to be safe. While he was busy making portals, he locked eyes with this savage beast. Before he could even block, the spear had already skewered him. Standing right there was Russell, gripping a flaming spear, looking all demonic with dragon eyes and horns. The cultist leader just laughed as he got blasted away, calling Russell a straight-up monster. Jerome set the princess down. He knew if they left any survivors, the whole mission was screwed. He pulled a double summon, conjuring 2 flaming blood swords, and rushed straight at Russell. Russell gritted his teeth, knowing his draconification was about to time out. Facing Jaren's barrage of bloody flames, Russell readied his spear. He was going to bet everything on one final strike. A massive explosion ripped out when they clashed. The dust settled, and Russell collapsed to his knees. Russell spat out blood. Jerome's swords were gone, and the Red Tower Mage's chest? It was turned into a mangled mess of meat. The sun was starting to rise as Russell sat down to catch his breath. Suddenly, a voice made him jump right back up. Damn it, in the end, he lost. Russell was shocked to see the cultist leader still standing. The guy mocked him. Don't tell me you thought you were the only one with 2 hearts? And that guy's the same, you know? The leader pointed to the side. Heavy death energy was swirling around someone. It was making him sprout horns, totally morphing. The leader explained, possessing power that can rival a dragon, the heart of a chimera. Jerome was back on his feet right in front of him, fully transformed. Every part of his body was morphing into a different animal. Dragon wings, horns, bird legs, and claws. He was completely healed and rocking an aura way stronger than before. Russell stared at the beast in front of him, realizing his mana levels had spiked to something off the charts. Jerome raised an open hand, then slammed it shut. Suddenly, the cultist leader felt his neck getting crushed by pure energy. Jerome asked if he was hiding his power on purpose, just to force him to use the heart. The cultist leader, dangling in the air from Jerome's grip, just laughed. He said he wanted to see that power too, and that he'd even skipped a few magic circles thanks to the heart. He also claimed it wasn't his fault Jerome got his butt kicked by Russell. Jerome tossed the cultist leader to the ground and admitted he was right. He'd messed up the order. He turned to Russell, planning to end him first. In a flash, Jerome had Russell by the throat. The Chimera guy admitted Russell had actually left a huge impression on him. But in the end, he couldn't protect a damn thing. Jerome smashed the barrier protecting the ruins, destroying it with a blow that warped space itself. The cultist leader was impressed, realizing the mage was really enjoying his new power. Russell wasn't planning on losing. He charged mana into his arm and blasted Jerome with a massive fire attack. It was a direct hit, but Jerome just laughed it off. He said he'd changed his mind. He threw Russell aside and declared he'd give him the ending he truly deserved. Russell got tossed right into the broken barrier. The cracks started sealing up, crushing him inside. Jerome wanted him to feel the pain of his soul getting ripped apart in the rift, hoping Russell would suffer while cursing his own uselessness. Russell woke up screaming. A nurse rushed over immediately. He stared at his hands, wondering where the hell he was. The nurse told him he was at the hospital in the capital of Camelot. He sat up, asking what happened with the battle at the ruins. The nurse said she didn't know what he was talking about. Russell shot up, asking about the princess and if she and the old archaeologist were okay. Just then, another nurse walked in, telling Russell to chill out. They said he was brought in because he suddenly had a seizure while cleaning the Lyrion Museum. Russell froze, totally confused. He started desperately calling for Pepper, thinking he must have gone back in time, but he was sure of what had happened. Suddenly, a bunch of magic circles popped up around Russell, trapping him. A doctor walked into the room. She told him to calm down so they could talk somewhere else. Russell was taken to the doctor's office. She said that, just like the nurse mentioned, after he passed out at the museum, he showed signs of extreme hallucinations, but Russell insisted he'd never had that issue. The doctor stood up and walked over to some plants, saying she wanted to tell him something. Given her position, she asked if Russell knew about the nightmare tree. The tree tricks people with sweet hallucinations, luring them inside to use their bodies as fertilizer. Russell didn't get what this had to do with him. She explained that the power of a nightmare tree that was going to be displayed at the museum had leaked out. She said that besides him, a bunch of other people were showing signs of hallucinations too. She signed some papers, saying the bright side was that the museum would cover the treatment costs. Russell was totally shocked, imagining that everything he went through was just a hallucination. The doctor then handed him the diagnosis papers. She told him to chill until the museum rep showed up to pay him off. Then she got all up in Russell's face, telling him it was time to wake the hell up from his little fantasy. Main character couldn't wrap his head around it being just a dream though. That's when Daria Snow White popped into his mind. Dude walked all the way to the Fire Tower mage's crib in the pouring rain. When he got there, 2 guards blocked his path like, "Where do you think you were going?" He told him he was there to see Daria, totally convinced she'd know him. The guards were just staring at this weirdo in a hospital gown like he was crazy. While Russell looked up at the rain, literally begging the universe that his past wasn't just some hallucination. Looking super gloomy, Russell introduced himself, swearing he was Daria's student. The guards were totally lost, saying they'd never heard of him and didn't know Daria even had a student. They started getting pissed, thinking this guy was totally nuts, but he wouldn't have shut up, so the guards attacked and tossed him aside. Just then, a carriage pulled up and Daria Snow White asked what the hell was going on. The guard bowed fast, snitching that Russell kept claiming to be her student. Daria peeked out the window, saw Russell, and was like, "Do I know you?" Which completely crushed the guy. He looked absolutely desperate. Since Russell didn't answer her, Daria told her driver to bounce, leaving him standing there in the rain like a loser. A bit later, back at the Lavrian Museum, Russell was staring at the dragon heart again, wondering if the nightmare tree dust really messed with his head. He got so mad he punched the glass case protecting the artifact, begging that if this was a dream, he needed to wake up right now. The alarm started blaring when the glass broke, and guards came running. They slammed him to the floor, pinned him down, and demanded to know who he was before dragging his desperate butt away. After that mess, Russell tried to prove his life wasn't a dream, but it was totally pointless. So, years went by. Russell fought hard against this messed up reality at first, but eventually he just stopped caring. Now, Russell was in the countryside, riding in a wagon with some randoms when he got a newspaper. He read about the youngest Spear Tower Master. By then, he was convinced there was no way a loser like him could have ever had a shot like that in real life. The wagon took him back to Walker Hill Academy, a place he never thought he'd see again, especially not as a janitor. Russell just emptied his head, gave up on his dreams, and basically gave up on himself. While sweeping leaves, he thought life wasn't that bad since he at least got a job that fit a nobody like him. Suddenly, he heard a noise. Behind a building, a bunch of students were bullying one kid. Russell turned away, figuring it wasn't his problem. But when he heard the cornered kid scream that he'd become a mage no matter what, Russell froze. The others were mocking the kid, mostly because he had clogged mana veins. That made Russell hesitate. They held the kid down while one student lit a fire on his finger, threatening to brand him so he'd never forget his sickness. The kid closed his eyes, terrified, but when he opened them, everyone else was passed out on the ground. He stood up and only saw the janitor calmly sweeping leaves. Later, while eating a sandwich, Russell complained to the kid, who was following him everywhere now. The boy laughed, claiming he was just reading a book and that this was a chill spot to focus. Main guy noticed a bunch of students hiding nearby. Russell sighed and asked if the kid really had clogged mana veins. He said he knew someone like him who used to study at the academy. The kid got hype and asked what happened to that person. Russell looked dead serious and said that guy got expelled because he couldn't break his limits, being called a total failure without hitting any of his goals. Russell said, for a mage, having clogged mana veins was like being dead inside. Sometimes, giving up takes guts, but the kid insisted he couldn't quit. He stood up, smiled, and swore he'd never give up. Russell stayed quiet, watching the kid walk away. Suddenly, some bald guy called out to him. Russell walked over, calling him boss. The man warned him to be careful and said to stay away from that kid if he didn't want drama. Russell was confused and asked what he meant. The man spilled the beans. The kid was the son of the traitor, the deposed master of the Red Tower. Memories of a ruined family flooded Russell's mind. Somewhere else, a group was listening to a talking skull say, "The Guardian world is ending. Head to Walker Hill Academy and tell him we are back." At a pond, the kid Russell was told to avoid was holding a small rock, trying to use magic on it. Suddenly, Russell walked up and asked why he couldn't just give up on being a mage. Like he did. The kid looked down, smiled, and said he made a promise to his mom. The protagonist went quiet. Just then, the bullies showed up with weapons. Their leader said they were sloppy last time, but this time would be different. Russell looked at the punks and told the kid to pay close attention, because it was the only way he'd ever be a mage. Then Russell unleashed his mana, making them back off. He gathered energy in his fist, ready to punch. Time passed, and the snow hit. Russell watched the kid running laps in the square, yelling at him to run faster because his life depended on the gap between him and the enemy. Overload and wizard body work differently for a kid compared to a fully grown adult. They're way more effective if you use them while you're still growing. While training the kid, Russell thought his progress was way too slow. He landed a solid hit on the kid, dropping him to his knees, totally gassed. Then the main guy asks him, "Yo, even with that promise you made, is this really all you got?" The kid scrambled back up, begging for just one more round. Pretty soon, it was time for the practical magic combat exams. The kid had leveled up big time during that break, managing to nail his opponent with an ice arrow and freezing the guy solid. Just like that, Spiegel took the win. The crowd in the stands was totally shook seeing a victory from the kid with the constricted mana veins. The loser, the same jerk who used to bully Spiegel, swore he'd get revenge, but Spiegel couldn't care less. He just looked up at the stands and secretly thanked our MC for helping him reach the second circle. But while the MC was watching the fight, some dude caught him off guard, calling him a bug. Seeing that hair color, he wondered if it was Coma Frederick. A while later, they found Russell beaten to a pulp in a corner. His boss reminded him that he'd warned him to stay away from that kid. Frederick was standing right in front of Russell, saying that, thanks to our main guy, his son had been humiliated over and over again. The MC just laughed when he realized the loser Spiegel beat was actually Frederick's son. The guy crouched down, saying Russell clearly didn't get how screwed he was, because with his connections, he could erase both Russell and the kid he loved so much. Russell started cracking up, surprising everyone. He looked at Frederick with pure disgust and said, "Me? Care about that kid? I only messed with him because it was fun." But despite the tough talk, Russell had to leave the academy because of Frederick, just to keep Spiegel safe. The MC left in the middle of the night, but before he could bail, Young Spiegel spotted him and asked where he was going. To the kid's shock, Russell said he was leaving this place for good. Spiegel asked why he was doing this, but the MC didn't answer. He just tried to run away from the kid. But the kid was faster, sprinting in front of the MC and blocking his path. That's when he noticed the bruises all over Russell's face. Russell asked what Spiegel expected from a guy like him, asking if the kid seriously thought he was his teacher or something. Russell pushed past the kid, telling him to stop being so delusional. Tears were streaming down Spiegel's face, even though he tried hard to hold them back. Coma Frederick was loving every second of it, saying this was exactly why he loved money and power, because with them, he could do whatever the hell he wanted. Suddenly, Frederick's carriage slammed to a halt, almost knocking him over. In front of the carriage, some hooded guys were blocking the road, while this creepy green light glowed around them. Coma was super pissed, screaming about how they dared to block the path of someone from House Frederick. But the only answer he got was a massive attack, hitting with enough force to wipe out the whole street. Russell, who was already far away, heard the powerful explosion that went off near the academy. Doubling back, he saw the whole school was up in flames. His jaw dropped in total shock, wondering what the hell had happened. A hooded guy was sitting high above everything, barking orders at the cultists. Today's attack announces the rebirth of our cult to the world. Spread out, cause horror and despair, and create a sea of blood. On his command, the cultists scattered, burning and destroying the academy and attacking the students. But not everyone was going to go down without a fight. One kid fired an ice arrow at a cultist, but even though it hit, it didn't do any damage. The cultist gave the kid a wicked smile and said, "A little fly is still alive?" Russell sprinted back to the academy. He found Spiegel on his knees in front of the cultist. The MC noticed that the kid was actually smiling. And the cultist noticed it too, asking if the kid wasn't scared. Spiegel was smiling, because he believed he'd bought enough time for the others to escape. Russell, hiding nearby, could feel a massive magical power coming from the cultist, power that even the teachers couldn't handle. He remembered how he used to dream of being some idealistic guardian, but now, waking up from that dream, he just felt powerless. He asked himself what he could possibly do, thinking he just needed to run. He convinced himself that running was the right move. There was no reason to sacrifice himself. The cultist looked down on Spiegel, telling the kid to know his place. Spiegel just replied that he knew he couldn't win, but that protecting people was what it meant to be a guardian. Russell was shook hearing those words he had said himself once upon a time. The cultist was done talking. He let his mana overflow, saying that Spiegel's naivety was exactly what sealed his fate. Just as he was about to attack the kid, he got blindsided by someone rushing in and stabbing him right in the gut with a sword. The attack wasn't enough to take him down, so the cultist turned on his new target, throwing Russell backward. The cultist ripped the sword out of his own body, gritting his teeth in rage at these annoying insects. Seizing the moment while the cultist was distracted, Spiegel channeled third circle magic, Ice Bolt. A bunch of ice shards slammed into the cultist's back. Even though Spiegel was exhausted after that attack, Russell didn't just stand there. He grabbed a spear and charged, managing to slice the enemy's neck. Russell dropped to his knees after taking down the cultist. Spiegel rushed over to him, seeing that the wound on the MC's arm wouldn't have stopped bleeding. Russell told the kid to get out of there fast, because more cultists were going to show up any minute. Spiegel was terrified, saying he couldn't go alone. The MC grabbed the kid's shoulders. "I'm not going to be a teacher who can't even protect one of his students." Being called a student shocked Spiegel. Russell told him to stay alive and become a guardian. The MC laughed, asking, "Is keeping one more promise going to kill you?" Spiegel started crying even harder than before. "I promise I'll become a guardian, master." Russell watched the kid run, leaving the academy behind. He had always been like that from the start, just like Russell's lost dream, and just like the courage the MC had abandoned long ago. That's exactly why Russell hated his guts, but kinda liked him too. While Spiegel was dipping out, some other cultist freaks showed up, and Russell just charged him straight on. The cultist just laughed at him, saying he wasn't even worth wasting a second circle spell on. Like total disrespect. Right then, Russell thanked Spiegel for giving him a reason to live. Then he grabbed his spear, ready to mess these guys up. He knew magic was just about understanding the principles, didn't matter if the circles were high or low level, so he popped Blink and rushed in. He teleported right behind one of the cultists, but the dude was fast enough to throw up a defensive shield. Close call. Accepting his fate, Russell just hoped Spiegel would make it out alive. The starry sky looked way brighter blue than usual. Blinded by that shine, Russell woke up like, "Where the heck am I?" Behind him, there was this creepy dude in white robes wearing a mask. The masked guy asked if Russell was finally awake. Russell stared at him, got up, and the dude started asking about that world. Russell said he lost the dream he was trying so hard to hold on to, even though he found that world again and protected it. Once he was up, Russell totally freaked out. He looked over and saw young Spiegel, and man, he got super worried. He yelled, asking if the kid didn't escape, and ran towards him, but bam, he slammed into an energy wall. Russell fell to his knees, sighed, and realized he didn't protect Jack squat, but the entity hanging out with him was like, nah, dude. You're wrong, Russell Raymond, heir to the dragon's power. Russell looked at the guy like, who even are you? The being put a hand on the barrier and said he's the master of the wicked world, but people call him the Temple of Mirrors. Our main guy thought he was hearing things. Then the entity spilled the tea. This place reflects the deepest fears in your heart. For Russell, it was about being worthy. Like, how could a washed-up third circle mage from a ruined family get such insane powers? It made him doubt if he deserved any of it. But the Temple of Mirrors said Russell already found the answers to that drama. He said Russell grew up to be a guardian who actually protects people. Russell stood up and asked, was this whole thing just a test? The temple was like, yup, confirming our boy overcame his limits and proved he could be a guardian even without any juice. That happened the moment he chose to protect Spiegel. The kid on the other side of the wall swore he'd never forget the promise he made. While Russell smiled at the kid, the temple said Spiegel wasn't fake. He was the pure courage Russell had managed to protect. The temple took off the mask and looked up. Now I'm going to keep my ancient promise, successor. From here on out, a new light shines. Time to move on. As the entity took off the mask, it glowed with this golden light and turned into pure energy. Russell got a notification pop up. He was absorbing dragon's blood, his body was getting rebuilt, and he scored the first golden mask. Back at Mount Calvin, Geron was impressed. Alan Page was standing there, clothes all burnt up, apologizing to the princess. Alan dropped to his knees. The princess was trapped next to the cult leader, who looked at Alan and said he'd heard a lot about some genius. He admitted Alan's quick thinking and moves with barely any info were actually pretty legit. The leader was impressed Alan used the artifact as a trap to save the princess, but nothing really changed. He called over Geron. He said they could stop playing around and get down to business. Geron flew at the barrier, pumping mana into the artifact he was holding. He said they had to smash the barrier first. Suddenly, a huge battering ram appeared. Spiegel was totally shocked by the divine artifact. The princess gritted her teeth, knowing the barrier couldn't stop something like that. Jaren was pumped. He wasn't planning to give the artifact to his bosses. He wanted to show it off to the world himself to prove he was the best. Geron ordered the battering ram to smash the barrier. The thing made a huge noise when it hit the ruin's protection, but after the first hit, a hand popped out through the crack the ram made, and a massive blast of mana exploded right against the artifact. Geron, the cult leader, the princess, and Spiegel were all stunned to see the battering ram actually got blocked. But Alan was different. He realized someone was there. A cloud of snow had kicked up from the ram's impact. Inside that cloud, a blue light was glowing, and stepping through it was Russell, holding a flaming spear and rocking a mask. Seeing that mask gave the leader and Geron a bad feeling, but Russell charged straight at the cult leader. The guy tried to defend himself by opening a portal, but Russell's attack was too OP. It pressured the leader and smashed the portal to bits. The leader got knocked back. Geron was seriously impressed seeing Russell's attack destroy that portal. Our main guy took advantage of the knockout to untie Spiegel and the princess. He said something, but they couldn't understand him because the mask muffled his voice, so he took the mask off. He said he was relieved they were safe. The two of them still hadn't realized the masked guy was actually Russell. On the flip side, Alan smiled like he was telling Hemingway, "Good luck winning that bet with Daria, buddy." The princess walked up, totally relieved. He held her hand, but Geron was leaking some terrifying mana, so Russell was like, "Let's talk later." Geron, acting like he was some superior being, said he was getting annoyed by these bugs. Just because you came back doesn't mean anything's changed. I'm gonna wreck you and take that artifact for myself. The fight kicked off instantly. You could see and hear those massive explosions from miles away. Russell's spear and Geron's bloody swords clashed in mid-air, while that chimera freak kept running his mouth, saying the mask should belong to him. In the middle of the brawl, Russell asked if Blaine was the mastermind behind all this mess. Geron lost it, unleashing a heavy hit that knocked Russell way back. But our main guy recovered fast, getting right behind Geron, telling him to quit stalling and admit he was Blaine's shadow. Geron didn't say a word, just kept swinging at him so Russell hit back, going blow for blow. They both landed after a deadlock. Then Geron wrapped his sword in red mana and cast a spell of origin. The truth is simple. I ain't his shadow. That massive strike created a blood-red wave that crashed down on Russell with a huge bang. The impact kicked up so much dust you couldn't see a trace of Russell anywhere. When the dust settled, there he was rocking 2 flaming spears and draconification. He didn't want to waste time transforming, so he rushed in for the kill. Meanwhile, Jaren was totally blinded by greed. If I get that mask, Blaine Trilogy is going to be my shadow. Power is everything. You know that too, don't you? Russell reached into his inventory space, pulled out the mask, and slapped it on, telling Jerome that strength isn't the most important thing. Russell got a notification that the mask was boosting his dragon blood, unlocking a second draconification. He wanted that power, so he triggered the second draconification. Boom! Fire exploded all around him, then the mask vanished, leaving these scale tattoos under Russell's eyes. He told him courage comes first, man. Jaren started walking toward him, mocking his words. That's just crap coming from someone who's never fallen into the darkness. Russell sighed and started flaring his mana. That ain't true, I've been in the dark too. The only difference is, I followed the light. Russell's mana spawned a bunch of flaming spears. With a hand squeeze, they fused together into one legendary magic spear, the Guy Bolg. Jiran was pissed. He spread his wings, shot up into the sky, and overflowed with enough mana to turn the whole sky red, raining attacks down on Russell, daring him to prove his words. Our guy used his new spear to tank the Chimera's heavy hits, causing a massive explosion as their powers collided. Not long after, the blast faded away. Jiran dropped to his knees, bracing himself with one hand. Then he realized his other hand had been chopped clean off. Knowing he had a chimera heart, he wondered why he couldn't catch up to Russell. Russell walked up to him and told him to just give it up. Jiran went ballistic. A new arm sprouted where the lost one was, plus 4 more from his back. Now he had 6 arms, each holding a blood sword. To use that much power, Jaren coughed up blood. Right then, Russell got a notification. Only 10 seconds left on Draconification. Reading that, Russell said he couldn't lose. Gripping the Gay Bolg, he channeled all his fire mana into the spear's tip. Jiran seized the moment while Russell was prepping, attacking first with pure killing intent. Russell just closed his eyes and focused. The next second, he unleashed the overheat magic. The mana packed in the spear pierced right through the chimera, shocking him. A huge torrent of flames burst out, swallowing everything in the spear's path. A mountain behind Jiran got hit by the blast and was totally vaporized, leaving a giant hole. Where Russell stood, a massive crater formed with him right in the center. Looking down, he saw Jiran spitting black blood, dragging himself with his hands cause his lower body was gone, but his strength finally gave out. Jiran's skin started cracking as he thought about his chimera power. The truth is, he always wanted to become a dragon but couldn't pull it off in the end. He wondered if this was his final fate. As the fight ended, a huge explosion rocked a nearby mountain. The mountaintop blew, sending lava flowing everywhere. That's when Spiegelman, Alan Page, and Princess Hecate Hatmos ran up to our guy. Pepper popped up out of nowhere too, headbutting him and then hugging him while crying her eyes out. Russell was super relieved Pepper was back. He told everyone to head back to Endymion and ditch these ruins, which were wrecked and totally unrecognizable now. After the squad left, the cultist leader went back to Mount Calvar. He grabbed the Chimera's severed hand and opened a portal to Baal. Meanwhile, at the Supreme Court of Endymion, a trial was going down. Jiran, a mage from the Red Tower, plotted with pagans and threatened the Empire's safety. His teacher, the Red Tower Master, is on the hook for this too. Lord Blaine Trilogy stepped forward. Blaine Trilogy, the Red Tower Master, introduced himself just like he was supposed to. He denied the accusations, claiming everything happened because he was careless and didn't spot the conspiracy. He argued that a disciple's sins are the master's problem, so as the Tower Master, he'd take the heat. While Blaine was talking, someone raised their hand, asking the judge to speak. It was Archduke Bismarck Hatmos. He gave the court a menacing look that made everyone freeze up. He said that while the judge wasn't wrong, it was also true that the Red Tower Master had done huge things for the nation, so he suggested wrapping up the trial with 6 months of probation for Blaine. The judge just nodded along with the Archduke's request, making Blaine Trilogy smirk like he owned the place. Daria was watching, and she totally realized they were all in cahoots. She glanced over at the box where the king was sitting. Daria knew the Archduke was constantly disrespecting the royal family's authority, and she couldn't help but wonder, what is the king actually thinking? Over in another part of the court, you had Alan Page, Spiegelman, and Russell. The Archmage was even hyping up Russell for his stylish outfit. But then, interrupting their chat, this woman in a blue and purple dress walks in. All 3 guys immediately bowed their heads to greet the princess. Hecate smiled and told them to raise their heads, saying she was the one who should be thanking them. Then the princess actually bowed to the group. To the guys who saved my life, I seriously thank you, especially you, Sir Russell. The protagonist was totally caught off guard by her thanking him specifically. He watched the princess turn to leave, but not before she shot him a wink and said they'd be seeing each other again. The vibe in the room got kinda awkward after she left. The protagonist tried to stay laser-focused, though. He saw this as the perfect chance to etch the Raymond family in people's minds. Not long after that, the 3 of them were kneeling in front of the king. Today's gathering is to honor these knights for what they've done. After recognizing what you guys did as a team, let's talk about individual contributions. The king then placed his sword on the archmage's shoulder. Spiegelman, mage of the Yellow Tower, you stood your ground against the pagans threatening the Empire's safety. Because of that, you're getting a reward of 200 gold coins and 2 mana enhancement pills. Then the king turned to Alan Page, resting the sword on his shoulder. Sir Alan Page, second son of Count Page and mage of the Spear Tower. You fought bravely against the pagans who were after the relics. You've earned the Medal of the Dawn, Morgenrot, and the title of Baron. The king then turned to the last guy, Russell Raymond, and told him to lift his head. In the past, your dad ran away from the battlefield, which was a huge threat to the kingdom's safety. So, it's only natural the ministers would doubt the Raymond family's loyalty. So, prove yourself right here, today. The protagonist didn't get what the king meant by that. The king then mentioned the master of the Flame Tower said Russell had hit the 5th circle. Daria smiled, knowing that the darker the shadow, the brighter the light shines within it. Then the king told the protagonist, with achievements like that, nobody's gonna doubt your efforts. Daria, watching closely, realized the king's plan was to turn Russell into a hero in front of everyone and weaken the Archduke's crew. So, the protagonist started channeling mana to create a projection circle, some basic first circle magic that shows off a person's stats. But for people who didn't know jack about magic, there was no better show. Right after he cast the projection circle, 5 fire circles popped up next to him, showing exactly what level he was at. Everyone was totally blown away by the mana and how fast Russell had grown. Considering he just graduated from the academy not long ago, Alan Page was there too, shocked by Russell's explosive progress. And not just him, but the Yellow Tower Master too. Russell then bowed to the king again. The king said he thought Russell's dad was a withered flower, but turns out he was hiding a beautiful seed. Russell replied to the praise, saying the king was being way too generous. Then the king shouted for everyone to hear. Listen up, knights. Regarding the special case of the Raymond family, I'm upgrading your title to Count. Plus, with a 3rd-class military merit medal, I hereby grant you the right to collect taxes from 10,000 households in the neighboring city. The protagonist accepted the king's gifts while everyone clapped and cheered the name Endymion. Then the king put his hand on Russell's shoulder and asked him to stand up. Holding the protagonist's hands, he thanked him for saving his daughter Hecate, saying these weren't the words of a king, but of a father. Then the king asked if there was anything Russell wanted so he could pay him back for what he did. Russell knew exactly what he wanted. Not long after, the protagonist went back to his room with the thing he asked the king for. At first, he didn't know how he'd ever get one, but thanks to how everything played out, he finally got his hands on a dragon heart. He looked at the dragon heart sitting over the flame. It looked shriveled and ugly, but he knew once he pumped some magic power into it, it'd show its true form. Hoping he could handle it, Russell started pouring mana into the dragon heart. After a while, he started feeling some resistance when suddenly the dragon heart cracked, breaking into pieces and releasing this crazy energy. From that energy, a dragon horn appeared. It was the same horn Russell found in the Trial of Fire when he had to fight those ice golems. Then, he got a notification, saying the dragon heart had revealed itself and that he'd obtained the Horn of the Forgotten King, a lightning essence. Russell sat in the lotus position, trying to assimilate the lightning essence. His eyes were shut tight as he soaked up the energy from the horn, compared to the time he had to absorb the fire essence. It was way easier this time. Russell opened his eyes, letting out a sigh of relief. Raising his hand, he could trace the powerful thundering energy. He was impressed because even without absorbing the whole essence, it had already filled up 1/3 of the 5th circle. While absorbing the energy, Russell got a notification that he'd hit the limit for lightning essence absorption. Any mana over the limit would stay inside him as dormant power. His intermediate understanding of the lightning attribute maxed out, advancing him to advanced understanding. Fire started spreading to some stuff in his room. With a growl, the little dragon spirit, Pepper, grew to the size of a bed. The protagonist was surprised, asking if Pepper got affected by the lightning power. The dragon nodded his head, like, yep. Pepper quickly flew out through a window and headed for the garden, taking flight. Russell rushed to the window to look for him, but Pepper had already come back. Pepper thumped his own chest, making Russell ask if the spirit wanted him to hop on. The dragon grabbed Russell by the shoulders and blasted off into the sky. Russell was freaking out for a sec, but that worry totally vanished once he saw the sick view of the city from above. Hanging there while Pepper carried him, Russell realized the dragon didn't just get bigger. His flying skills had seriously leveled up. He figured since Pepper was huge now, he'd be way easier to spot, and wondered if he should stress about that. Suddenly, Pepper's eyes lit up with flames. Then the dragon's wings started fusing with the protagonist's body. In a flash, Pepper's wings wrapped right around Russell, creating 4 wings on the protagonist's back. Russell was totally blown away by these wings made of flame spirit and asked Pepper, "Hey, should we call these spirit wings?" The spirit just gave a growl. Russell started feeling real confident. He'd already snagged the essence of lightning, reached the intermediate level of the 5th mana circle, and now he had spirit wings. With that kind of power, he felt like he could take on any opponent, no sweat. Back at the Tower of Flames, some guy walked up to Daria, saying he heard she had a job for him. Daria told him the mission was to escort Count Kimberly, a special envoy from the Kiel Kingdom. She explained that even though Kiel's national forces were kinda weak, they stayed neutral because they produced a ton of mana. But apparently Marquis Giulio Comanche, from the pro-Empire faction, had tried to drag the Empire into their business. So, instead of falling under the Empire's control, Count Kimberly figured teaming up with Endymion was the smarter play. The mage headed out, knowing that since it involved the Kiel Kingdom, this wasn't going to be a walk in the park. Just then, Russell called out to Hilbert. The guy turned back to greet the protagonist, since they hadn't seen each other in ages. Russell asked if Hilbert was headed to the Kiel Kingdom, and Hilbert was shook, asking how the heck the protagonist knew that. Russell just asked if he could tag along, since Daria already gave him the green light. From what Russell remembered, Hilbert actually lost his life on this mission, so the protagonist got a new quest: return alive with Hilbert from the unknown danger. Russell knew there was no reason to stop Hilbert from going, so the only thing he could do was stick with him. The two took off together. Hilbert used magic to run across the treetops, while Russell used his fresh spirit wings to fly right over them. Hilbert confirmed they were almost at the destination and admitted he was super relieved to have Russell with him. Then the mage asked the protagonist why he even joined this mission. Russell played it cool, just saying he wanted to rack up new achievements and that he'd never actually done a mission with Hilbert before. The protagonist then sped up, flying past Hilbert and saying he was going to scout ahead to check the situation. Russell knew if this mission failed, the tragedy with Hilbert would happen all over again, and the Empire would mess with Kiel's internal affairs. That meant there was a huge probability the Empire was involved in whatever happened to Hilbert. So Russell decided he had one single mission: protect Hilbert. Reaching a clearing, Russell looked down and saw a bunch of people fighting. This was the perfect spot to start his mission, taking out all the Imperial trash. Throwing his hands forward, he blasted a bunch of fire cones using the flare cannon spell. He was doing this to make sure Hilbert's life wasn't threatened. After wrecking the enemies, Russell touched down with Pepper, who was chilling in a small form. Introducing himself as Russell Raymond, a mage from the Tower of Flames, he asked a man if he was Count Kimberly, since he was there to escort him. The Count knew Russell's rep. He thanked him, saying people started tailing him the second he left the castle. But while they were talking, Russell sensed something coming from the woods. He turned around, telling Count Kimberly to hang on a sec. He felt an aura in the forest. Whoever owned that aura had to be on the level of a master swordsman, or maybe even more skilled. Through the trees in another clearing, a bunch of Kiel soldiers had surrounded a man with red hair who had popped up trying to stall for time. The red-haired guy laughed like he was facing easy prey. He attacked with his sword, slashing horizontally. Then it clicked. Russell finally remembered who this guy was. But while he was remembering, the man had quickly defeated all the soldiers and destroyed a bunch of trees. Russell was certain. The man who caused the tragedy that fell on Hilbert was the Empire's swordsman, McCrae Hughes. Hilbert finally caught up to where Russell and Kimberly were introducing themselves. Kimberly introduced himself and thanked Hilbert too. Hilbert looked around. Seeing the defeated men, he figured out the scenario fast. They were up against the Imperial army. Kimberly was totally freaking out about that. Russell had a hunch though. The Empire wasn't trying to hide their identity. Maybe because they didn't think they needed to, or because things were so urgent for them that they didn't care. Isn't that right, Princess? Russell looked at the carriage to confirm his suspicion. A young girl with golden hair and green eyes stepped out of the carriage. Actually, you are just as extraordinary as the rumors say. Let me introduce myself formally. I am Princess Camilla of the Kiel Kingdom. The four of them sprinted through the forest. Kimberly explained that Marquis Comanche was trying to grab power by forcing his son to marry the princess. With the Empire backing him, his cruelty would be off the charts. Kimberly, who was getting a piggyback ride from Hilbert, kept talking. He said they'd already ditched the pursuers, so he asked if there was really a reason to rush like this. Hilbert shot back that since they'd chased Kimberly and the princess from the moment they left the fortress, there had to be other groups out there. Even though they put some distance between them, Russell didn't sense anyone following. But still, he had this creepy, sinister feeling. Suddenly, Russell got a bad vibe and yelled for everyone to duck. Behind him, a blast of energy came flying at them like a horizontal slash. The energy whizzed right over their heads, slicing through trees and causing a massive explosion that totally wrecked the forest. Hilbert dropped Kimberly off his back and told her to scram, because he and Russell were going to handle things right there. Kimberly and the princess started booking it while Russell and Hilbert squared up against the dude who just showed up. Hilbert was totally freaking out. staring at the guy he called a walking disaster, the Empire's big bad tiger swordsman, Makari Hughes. This dude, Hughes, was rocking an eye patch, and he stared the protagonist down, checking out his black hair and red eyes. He guessed the kid had to be Russell Raymond. Right then, Russell's mission log got an update. He had to survive against the dangerous Makari Hughes and keep Hilbert alive too. The protagonist felt some insane pressure just from Hughes looking at him. The guy said he was going to make Russell pay for wasting his student. A split second later, Hughes slashed sideways using sword kinesis magic. Russell didn't just stand there, though. He slapped his hand on the ground using earthquake magic and cast a second spell to throw up a shield. A bunch of rocks flew up and hurled themselves at Hughes, forcing him to defend. He sliced through the rocks fast. But while Hughes was distracted, Hilbert saw his shot. He clenched his hands and made the loose stones bunch up, locking down Hughes' hands and feet. Hilbert gave the protagonist the signal to wreck him. Russell rushed in with his flaming spear and triggered a massive explosion on impact. After that, he quickly bounced back to Hilbert's side. When the dust settled, Hughes was totally fine. He asked Russell if he'd only learned cheap parlor tricks from that bastard flame mage. Russell was shook that Hughes was okay, wondering if the guy had wrapped his body in an aura or something. Hughes planted his sword in the ground, saying he was going to show Russell something cool. Light started glowing in Hughes' hands while a red strip started spinning around him. The next second, using sword fuchsia magic, Hughes busted out these energy circles that attacked Hilbert, slashing the mage up. Hughes then gave a little intro to the attack he just used. A sword made of dragon bones, corrupted by the blood of 10 mages. It's the perfect weapon for killing mages. Hughes yanked the sword out of the ground again and charged at the protagonist. Russell quickly scooped Hilbert up and popped his spirit wings to fly off, dodging Hughes' last attack. Russell shot up into the sky, making Hughes admit he was actually impressed. Looking down, the protagonist spotted some stuff near Hughes and wondered if they were firebomb stones. But Hughes didn't give Russell time to think, attacking him again with waves of mana. Russell kept trying to fly and dodge while remembering what those firebomb stones actually did. They were stones that blew up on heavy impact, wrecking a huge area. So he cooked up a plan that would definitely mess with Hughes' head. Setting Hilbert down on the ground, Russell thanked Pepper for helping him save the mage. Right then, Hughes pointed his sword at Russell, asking if he was trying to buy time for the others to bail since he couldn't win. Russell just ignored the guy and whispered to Hilbert to run the second he gave the signal so he could meet up with the princess and the count. Hilbert gritted his teeth, asking if Russell was saying he was going to sacrifice himself so Hilbert could escape. The protagonist smiled at him, telling Hilbert to trust that he'd come back alive. Hughes was already sick of their little chat. He started overflowing with mana, getting ready to strike, but Russell moved first, using his new lightning ability. He cast Chain Lightning. As soon as the spell went off, Russell gave Hilbert the signal to run. Watching Hilbert run off, Russell knew the firebomb stones would buy him enough time. But still, he couldn't underestimate Hughes as an opponent. The protagonist kept up the attack, using the Nebula Ring's skill, Thunderstorm, planning to go full send. Russell quickly triggered Stage 2 of Dragonification. A bunch of magic spears, Gaebolg, shot out of a fire circle above Russell's head, while his spirit wings flared up. He planned to dump everything he had into a single strike. He gathered all the spears and smashed Hughes, causing a massive explosion in the forest. The shockwave was so gnarly that Hilbert, who'd already caught up to the Count and the Princess, had to throw up a barrier to protect the three of them. The dust from the impact took a while to clear out. Russell, who turned off Dragonification, was kneeling in the corner, totally gassed from the skill backlash. He wondered if the attack actually worked. Right then, he heard a voice say, "You're seriously done for now. Don't think you're gonna die peacefully." Hughes, who'd lost his eye patch, was holding a sword in each hand cause he used both to block. The protagonist cursed the guy for surviving his attack. The second Hughes tried to swing at the protagonist, his bone sword started acting weird. Even though he was gripping the sword with everything he had, it wouldn't listen to him. Then he heard this creepy voice. "How dare you try to hurt the Dragon Lord with a dragon's bone? You ridiculous human!" Russell remembered that was the same voice he heard when he found the dragon heart at the museum for the first time. He wondered if the voice belonged to the Divine Dragon King. A massive dragon appeared right in front of Russell. Its sheer size just showed off the superiority of the dragon race. The mana leaking off it was so pure it shone like gold. The dragon then spoke to Russell. "I gotta lend you my power for a sec. I'm begging you, wipe out this worm that's insulting the dragon name. Oh, Divine Dragon King, I got a favor to ask. Find the dragons. Their existence is going to connect you to me. You are going to become the master and the hope for the dragons left in this world." Russell's eyes turned into dragon eyes as he jumped back into the second stage of Dragonification. But this time, He felt an even crazier power inside him. He might not get what the dragon really wanted, but if he had this power, he could totally pull it off. While Russell was soaking up the dragon's power, Hughes was having a really bad time. His sword, made of dragon bones, took control of itself and sliced Hughes's arm right off. On top of that, Russell didn't give the swordsman an inch to fight back. With that flaming spear in his grip, Russell busted out the overheat magic, coming right at Hughes. Even with that heavy hit, McCrae Hughes managed to clap back. Where an arm used to be, this weird energy just popped up, forming an aura arm that snagged the flaming spear. Hughes stared down the protagonist, sneering at him. "You think losing an arm changes anything? Those cocky eyes, you got the same eyes as your dad? Are all you Raymonds like this?" The protagonist jumped back fast, wondering if McCrae Hughes knew his old man. Then Hughes dropped a bomb. "I wanted to rip those arrogant eyes out of his skull, but sadly, someone beat me to it. What a moron. Why do you think the Empire offed your dad?" The second Russell got distracted by those words, Hughes flashed right behind him. Russell was quick enough to whip out a horizontal flame strike, forcing Hughes to duck just to dodge it. The swordsman slashed at the protagonist, who scrambled back. Even though he retreated, Russell took a hit to the side, grinding his teeth, shocked he actually got tagged. Hughes mocked Russell. "To think you couldn't even dodge such a basic attack," he sneered. "So pathetic, you're pitiful." He clenched that energy fist where his arm used to be. A barrage of attacks rained down where Russell was standing as he charged. Hughes closed the gap on the protagonist instantly, predicting exactly where he'd run after dodging. He brought a strike down from above. Russell hurriedly threw up a barrier to block, but Hughes' attack crashed into him, slamming him into the ground with crushing force. Seeing Russell on the dirt, Hughes asked if he really thought he could win with such pathetic talent. Even though he was shaking, Russell tried to get back up through the pain. Hughes walked up slowly, claiming there's no way to reach a higher level without sacrificing something. He raised his sword to strike, saying it was way too early for a kid like Russell to be fighting him. Hughes' sword slammed down heavy, causing an energy explosion, but Russell was faster and dodged it. The protagonist booked it into the forest, weaving through the trees. Russell had no choice but to admit Hughes was a superhuman, an opponent on a whole other level. Hughes rushed to catch up to the protagonist. Russell then cast Wind Wave to hit Hughes and make some space. A blast of wind blew out from his spirit wings. Hughes swung his sword, clashing with the wind blast the protagonist threw. Seeing Hughes block everything, Russell wondered if winning was even possible. Then he flipped his mindset, deciding he wasn't going to quit. With a wave of his hands, Russell cast a spell to hit Hughes' gravity. The increased gravity crushed down on the swordsman, making it hard for him to move. Russell was sure he'd make this guy learn how a mage really fights. With a flick of his finger, Russell unleashed flames that mixed into the wind, crashing down on Hughes. Like a tornado, a massive explosion slammed into the swordsman. The blast was so strong it forced Russell back while swallowing Hughes in the flames. After a sec, Russell caught a glimpse of Hughes inside the fire, a skinless freak, like a demon. Both of Hughes' arms were made of that energy now. He charged at Russell, grabbing him. "You dare play games with me using these cheap tricks? You are screwed." But Russell wasn't going to let Hughes threaten him without paying the price. With the enemy right in his face, the protagonist saw this as the perfect chance to use the Ring S ability. Instantly, a lightning bolt struck both of them. Inside that bolt, Russell was planning to sacrifice everything if he had to, just to reach greater heights. Even if he had to trash his own body, it'd be worth 1,000,000 times more. After the lightning hit, Russell drove a knee into Hughes, sending him flying. With the lightning coursing through him, Russell juiced up his muscles with electricity, exploding his speed. This was the last card he'd been holding up his sleeve until now. Grabbing the big spear, Russell used a skill he created himself, charging forward fast. This was a killer blow. Hughes couldn't do anything but look shocked as Russell dashed past, striking him. After the hit, Russell coughed up blood from the recoil of using that power. Despite all that, Hughes was totally fine, cackling like a maniac. Russell had dropped to his knees in front of this monster. Right then, Hughes rushed the protagonist, grinding his head into the dirt. Russell was desperate, trying to fire up his power again. Suddenly, a voice came from behind the two of them fighting. "Still looking like a beast, aren't you, Mr. McCrae Hughes?" A heavy rock blast slammed into Hughes' gut, sending him flying. When he hit the ground, the energy making his new arm just evaporated. He looked at the man in front of him, shocked. The guy looked down at Hughes, asking how it felt to crawl on the ground like a bug. The bald dude, the Yellow Tower Master, was ready to end Hughes. He channeled a final attack right at the swordsman, nailing him. The Yellow Tower Master looked around, checking out all the destruction, and remembered the state McCrae Hughes was in when he arrived. He thought to himself, "Unbelievable to think he pushed McCrae Hughes this far, all by himself. You did something huge, Russell. Your desperate fight changed the fate of Endymion and Keel. Now nobody can doubt your skills." While the Yellow Tower Master analyzed the scene, Hilbert, the princess, and the count came running back to save Russell, who was lying on the ground. Hilbert cradled Russell in his arms, eyes tearing up. The protagonist was happy to see his old teacher, while the Yellow Tower Master was sure of one thing. This was the true birth of a hero. 10 days after the incident, the protagonist still hadn't fully recovered, even though he was focused on healing. Thanks to that, he realized just how high the wall was to become a superhuman. Remembering the battle, Russell knew if Sir Nickel hadn't shown up in time, he would have lost. Before that fight, Russell thought he'd gotten stronger, but there was still a long road ahead. Then he remembered what the dragon said about finding the others. According to the info Russell had, dragons were supposed to be extinct. He wondered if there was actually a dragon still alive out there. After a while, Russell got a visit from Hilbert in the infirmary. He filled his old teacher in on what Hughes had said about his dad. Hilbert wasn't sure if the incident with Russell's dad was actually the Empire's fault. He told the professor what Hughes had asked, basically if he thought the Empire was to blame. Hilbert thought it over carefully and said it might just be a provocation, but they should watch their backs anyway. Then Hilbert suggested they investigate secretly through the Tower of Flames. He also mentioned Daria was super worried and just glad to see Russell was okay. He handed Russell a letter. The protagonist asked what it was, and Hilbert told him it was an invite to the royal banquet. When the big day came, the protagonist showed up at the event. He felt totally awkward in those fancy formal clothes. Probably, because he's used to just wearing robes. He kept fidgeting with the bow tie on his outfit the whole time. Seeing Russell all alone, Daria walked over, praising him for always doing amazing stuff. She flashed a big smile, saying that as his teacher and master of the Tower of Flames, nothing could be more rewarding. But while they were chatting, someone interrupted, calling out for the Tower Master. Daria was shocked to see the guy, calling him Killian Parison. She said she couldn't believe she was seeing him at the banquet. The guy with long green hair tied in a low bun said he just couldn't resist seeing the god from the rumors. The protagonist couldn't believe the dude standing in front of him was actually Killian Parison, so he asked if that's who he was. Killian said he was glad Russell knew him, because it made talking way easier. I mean, it's hard not to know Killian Parison, the weapon master, a superhuman aura user who can handle 18 different types of weapons. Russell was impressed that someone that strong came looking for him first. Killian revealed he'd heard Russell gave McRae a hard time. The protagonist smiled, claiming he just got lucky, but Killian shot back with a nod, saying luck only favors the skilled. Then Killian Parison gave this crazy, manic smile. You did a good job getting rid of that bastard. McRae and his disciple were nothing but trash. Hearing stuff like that inside the palace, Russell felt like he was listening to mercenaries, not royalty, but he just nodded and agreed Killian was right. Then Killian squeezed the protagonist's arm muscles, asking if he'd been training with a spear since he was so ripped. The protagonist said he was just at the stage of repeating basic spear techniques. Killian praised him, saying the basics are important, but to break his limits, he needed to learn properly. Then he handed the protagonist a ring, telling him if he ever needed guidance, to bring that ring and come find him. Taking the ring, Russell asked why Killian was being so nice to him. Killian said it wasn't a kindness, it was like putting extra fertilizer on a promising tree. Hearing that comparison, Daria let out a little laugh. To her, Killian was like a true warrior disguised as a noble. The protagonist accepted the favor. While the three of them were chatting, an announcement went out. The brilliant son and ruler of Dion, His Majesty the King, entered the hall. The king, followed by Princess Hecate, walked across the room while everyone bowed to greet them. As the princess walked, she was side-eyeing the crowd, like she was looking for someone. Then she smiled when she found him, greeting Russell. The king went up to a podium, while Russell and Hilbert knelt in front of him. In front of everyone, the king said he recognized the contributions they made to the alliance with Kai and the recent victory. Hilbert, you'll receive 500 gold coins, 100 good horses, and the right to collect taxes from 1,000 families in the southern part of the kingdom. Hilbert thanked the king for his generosity, and then it was the protagonist's turn. As for you, Russell, you get 3,000 coins, and I hereby grant you authority over 3 cities in the west, as the County of Raymond. The protagonist was shocked by the reward. A servant handed him a document listed with the names and locations of the 3 cities in the county. Russell thanked the king for his generosity. He smiled. He finally had his own land, which was one step closer to restoring his family. The king, holding a drink, said these rewards should be enough, and raising his glass, he continued the banquet, celebrating the great victory. He told everyone to enjoy themselves. In the grand hall, people started dancing. Over in a corner, the princess was sitting on a gold chair with a lady in waiting. Seeing the look on the princess's face, the lady asked what was wrong. The princess pointed over to where the protagonist was, saying Count Raymond was way too popular. Raymond was surrounded by women, and the princess was annoyed, saying he should turn them down if he didn't like it, asking what he was trying to pull. The lady asked why she didn't just go ask Raymond to dance, but the princess said she was gonna wait. She held up a finger, saying, "People say you shouldn't be aggressive with a young man because sometimes waiting quietly is a virtue of an older man." Her attendant thought that sounded weird and asked where the princess